A man awakens with status ailment immunity at the start. However, it's the most useless skill. He can't even defeat the most ordinary rat. During a dungeon challenge, his teammates betray him. He's knocked off a cliff by a monster's attack. To survive, he's forced to devour monsters. At this moment, the various status ailments that should have been triggered by consuming monsters are nullified. He even gains countless new skills instead. Only now does he discover the true purpose of his ability. On this continent, every adult awakens a skill. These people are called adventurers, but Rude's awakened skill only provides debuff immunity and cannot participate in combat. Dungeons are usually filled with miasma. Most adventurers cannot enter directly. But this miasma has no effect on Rude, so he's called a miasma cleaner. The miasma grass before him has the effect of purifying miasma. Selling miasma grass has become his only source of income. As he ventures deeper, several miasma rats appear before him. Monsters living in dungeons all use poison gas or toxins. But this doesn't affect Rude much, so he draws his sword and charges. However, his full strength attack fails to stop the opponent. Instead, he gets bitten in close combat. At the critical moment, a fireball comes to help resolve the crisis, but nearly costs him his life. The other person shows complete disdain for Rude's identity, and he has no choice but to express gratitude. This day, the Adventurers Guild brings him bad news. A new dungeon has appeared. Inside are countless treasures and riches. Therefore, the guild has gathered countless adventurers, and the miasma grass he brings out has correspondingly dropped in price. Because most adventurers choose the new dungeon over the miasma dungeon. As an E-rank adventurer, due to his level, he cannot enter the D-rank new dungeon. For this reason, no one will team up with him. Suddenly, a blonde appears behind him, asking Rude to join his team as a porter. Everyone cannot understand the blonde's actions. Why would he invite an E-rank to join? But the blonde appears very enthusiastic. However, what Rude doesn't expect is that this would be a trap. When they arrive at the dungeon, it's already overcrowded. Every area has been occupied by other teams. The first floor of the dungeon seems to have been fully explored. The pineapple-haired man suggests entering the second floor, while Rude suggests only exploring the first floor. Since the new dungeon has many unknowns, the suggestion is opposed by everyone. The monsters on the second floor are indeed more dangerous than the first. However, they still have no resistance against them. Wild wolves fall under magical attacks. Under sword techniques, they're split in two. Rude didn't expect these three people to be so formidable. He himself is too frightened to move his body even slightly. Moments later, wild wolf corpses litter the ground, and Rude takes on the porter's work. Suddenly, a tremendous pressure rushes toward them. A monster descends from above. B-rank monster, Minotaur. Everyone cannot believe why a B-rank monster would appear on the second floor. With their strength, they cannot possibly contend with it. At this moment, the blonde tells Rude to return the backpack to him. He needs to use the items inside. Rude thinks he already has a battle plan. However, the blonde's expression changes. He slashes a bloody wound across Rude's back. The pineapple-haired man throws a giant axe, blocking his retreat. Only now does Rude understand they intended to abandon him from the start. They no longer hide their true nature, revealing their ugly faces. Then they abandon him and flee without hesitation. Seeing the Minotaur's giant axe about to strike down, Rude desperately dodges the attack, but also crashes heavily into the wall. Just as he's celebrating avoiding the attack, the Minotaur's follow-up attack comes immediately. Under this strike, it actually shatters the surrounding wall. The Minotaur itself didn't expect a huge pit on the other side. Thanks to the Minotaur as a cushion, Rude miraculously survives. But this is only a matter of time. Even without monsters, he'll die from blood loss or starvation. To survive, a bold idea emerges in his mind. That is to gnaw on the monster's corpse. However, this is taboo. If a human consumes a monster's corpse when their magic power is exhausted, the monster's magic particles will erode their body, causing them to exhibit monster-like behavior. The recovered Rude walks through the dungeon like a zombie. His eyes turn crimson. Several bats fly toward him. Skill roar, intimidating opponents with thunder-like howls. The leading bat immediately falls. Skill stamina amplification, temporarily enhancing the target's stamina. Then the giant axe swings toward the opponent. Next, he picks up the bat's corpse and gnaws on it. Gain skill echolocation, effectively detecting surrounding creatures. Monsters in the darkness become as clear as daylight. He never expected his status ailment immunity skill could offset the erosion of monster magic particles and even gain their skills. After his rebirth, he's gone absolutely wild. Various monsters fall instantly. Even without using his eyes, he can sense the monster's magic power. The single-eyed monster is instantly split in two, and the remaining eyeball becomes his food. He now looks more like a monster, showing greed toward the creatures. Each time he devours a monster, he can feel his whole body filled with power. The monsters before him are no longer monsters, but delicious dishes. After an intense battle, he finally reaches the dungeon exit. He never expected to miraculously survive. On the other side, at the Adventurers Guild, Guildmaster Lankus inquires about why Rude failed to escape the dungeon. Belle acts heartbroken, claiming he couldn't protect Rude when they encountered the Minotaur. Sasha even covers her face as if about to cry. Upon learning of the Minotaur incident, Lankus immediately sealed the dungeon and prohibited entry. Suddenly, Rude's figure appears at the entrance. Seeing this, the three break out in cold sweat. Rude's appearance means their deeds will be exposed. Belle hypocritically approaches to greet him, actually threatening Rude not to say what he shouldn't, just as they think the matter can end here. Under Rude's gaze, they find themselves unable to move. Rude tells the truth of what happened in the dungeon. Belle attacked him with a sword from behind. The pineapple-haired man used his skill to lure the Minotaur to attack him, while Sasha assisted the two in escaping, completely treating him as a pawn. Belle still wants to argue. But at this moment, the truth guard who rarely leaves the palace appears here, because the death rate of porters who temporarily join their team is abnormally high. so Lankis brought him here. The truth skill is innate and unique. No lie can pass before the truth skill. The truth guard only glances once, then slowly speaks. The Crimson Sword team is lying, Rude is telling the truth. This answer shocks everyone present. These three people actually treated their teammate as a disposable pawn. If greater crimes exist, they will lose their adventurer qualifications and become slaves. This result is unbearable for them. The enraged Bell actually raises his sword toward the truth guard. At the critical moment, Rude raises his sword to block, then swings his fist at the opponent. Bell is instantly blasted out of the guild. The Adventurers Guild compensates Rude 200,000 gold coins for his losses. Regarding the three members of the Crimson Sword team, if it's proven they used adventurers as bait, then they will permanently become slaves. Rude knows that after what just happened, perhaps no one will bully him anymore, but that doesn't mean they'll become kind. The current priority is to upgrade equipment and enter dungeons to make money, but when he sees the prices, he's stunned. A magic bag costs 200,000 gold coins. Compared to before, the dungeon rats now pose no threat to him. Activating skill Appraisal. Appraisal is a skill obtained from the single-eyed monster. The rat's status panel appears before him. Only then does he remember to check his own level attributes. The adventurer nameplate records adventurer attribute information. Rude looks at the data before him in disbelief. His level has risen from 7 to 42. Opening the skill menu fills him with even more excitement. Various skills are countless. The current floor can no longer satisfy him. 6th floor, miasma rats. 9th floor, miasma frogs. 13th floor, miasma spiders, until he reaches the 24th floor. Hiding behind, Rude activates his appraisal skill. Lizard Soldier, level 25, 8 skills. Normally a pack creature, but appearing alone now. Though somewhat puzzled, its value is worth the risk. Rude raises his sword and strikes the opponent. However, it only leaves a shallow, painless scratch. Rude quickly gives chase, but ahead is a dead end. Just as Rude prepares to attack, the Lizard Soldier before him starts laughing. A huge shadow looms over Rude from behind. The Lizard Soldier's apparent retreat was actually a trap. Rude finds himself caught between enemies front and back. Facing the sudden sword strike, Rude quickly retreats to dodge. He can only break through by fighting one-on-one. Just as he's about to deliver a fatal blow, another Lizard Soldier raises its shield to block. The Lizard Soldier behind attacks with a sneak attack. By the time he reacts, the passage is somehow filled with Lizard Soldiers, though he knows they're pack creatures. This ambush tactic is completely beyond Rude's expectations. There must be a commanding Lizard Soldier among them. Indeed, a motionless Lizard Soldier stands not far away. Rude uses his appraisal skill on it. Lizard General, level 32. Indeed, among its skills, he finds command-like abilities. The opponent lets out a roar. Countless Lizard Soldiers attack Rude. Skill, Stamina Amplification. A swing of the great sword instantly breaks their offensive. Then he leaps up and strikes at the boss with his sword. The opponent takes this sword strike head-on. What Rude doesn't expect is that the opponent is completely unharmed. At the same time, the opponent thrusts with its sword. At the critical moment, Rude quickly activates skill, Steel Body, can turn the body into steel. This saves him from disaster. He clearly felt he hit the opponent, yet the opponent shows no injury. Moreover, the opponent has no special skills. Just as he looks confused, he notices a Lizard Soldier with a chest wound. It actually has an exclusive skill, Substitution. The opponent actually took the boss's damage. However, Rude doesn't give it time to react. The Lizard General roars frantically, once again surrounding Rude. Skill, Web Control. All the Lizard Soldiers gathering together actually provides Rude with an opportunity. A web with lightning power descends from above. The unprepared lizard group is firmly caught in the web. Seeing Rude swing his sword, the Lizard General's head is instantly separated from its body. Next comes the delicious moment. The magic bag purchased for 200,000 gold coins actually contains pots, pans, and utensils, as well as seasonings like oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. Monster corpses that other adventurers scoff at are delicious dishes in his eyes, enjoying delicious food while harvesting new skills. Indeed, he receives notifications of new skills, but these skills are inferior compared to previous ones. Suddenly, a cry for help comes from deep in the tunnel. He never expected someone to venture deeper into the dungeon than him. He quickly packs up his utensils and runs over. On the other side, a group of people surround a young girl. The girl before them is actually an elf. Rude's appearance is somewhat unexpected to them. The scarred man's eyes reveal killing intent, but Rude remains nonchalant. With the elf girl's warning, he learns they are the notorious adventurer hunters, who specialize in hunting adventurers. Under his appraisal skill, he can only see their levels, unable to see through their skills and status. Everyone else is the same, only showing levels, and their levels are much higher than his own. They might have skills or items that hide their true strength. The scarred man speaks coldly. Kill him. The sleazy man sleazily swings his sword. Rude doesn't dodge, raising his sword to block. Both sides are evenly matched. Just as the opponent prepares a new offensive, Rude spits green liquid from his mouth. Skill, Venom. This completely catches the opponent off guard. The next second, the opponent lies on the ground wailing continuously. Moments later, he falls silent. In Rude's eyes, they're not ordinary adventurers at all. He can only choose this kind of combat to survive. The scarred man also realizes his uniqueness. They cannot fight one-on-one. Then two of them charge forward, facing their fierce offensive. The opponents have no intention of leaving anyone alive. At the critical moment, he creates distance. However, the opponent's kick follows immediately. Skill, Steel Body, but he's still kicked into the swamp. The long-haired man wants to continue pursuing. The scarred man quickly stops him. Because before them is a poison swamp, continued advance will cause poison gas corrosion. However, the poison gas has no effect on Rude whatsoever. Normally, the swamp's poison gas would drain an adventurer's magic power. To keep Rude at bay, their bodies are already feeling discomfort. Seeing the elf girl's injuries worsening, he has no choice but to leave the poison swamp. Seeing Rude unaffected by the poison gas, the scarred man's pupils constrict as he realizes the man before him has status ailment immunity skill. He quickly orders his subordinate to attack. Compared to before, this time Rude appears more relaxed, because miasma accumulating in the body weakens various attributes. The long-haired man's cleaver comes at him, but Rude doesn't dodge. Though it clearly hits his body, it cannot penetrate even slightly. This time Steel Body blocks the opponent's attack. Skill, Lightning Cloak, then Rude is enveloped in lightning. The two are instantly electrocuted, charred outside and tender inside. The next second, they lose the ability to fight back. Skill, Airstrike, continuously compressing air in his hands, and it flies toward the opponent like a bullet. The endless skills completely catch the scarred man off guard. Not understanding why a human would have monster skills, Rude says nothing and charges with his sword. At this time, level differences don't matter much. Due to miasma poisoning, strength drops exponentially. At the critical moment, the opponent activates agility enhancement, then charges toward Rude. At the same time, skill activates physical propulsion. The opponent's face shows an expression of disbelief. Rude remains expressionless. If not for status ailment immunity, he would be the one fallen. However, immediately after, a wasp's attack comes head-on. Rude uses appraisal on it. Manhwa, level 37, 8 skills. Rude strikes first, charging with his sword. The opponent's aerial slash comes head-on, instantly brushing past the girl. The wasp occupies the aerial advantage. However, the next second, Rude uses the same skill, aerial slash. Countless wind blades fly toward the wasp. The wind blades leave several bloody cuts on its body. In an instant, the opponent releases paralyzing scales, but these scales have no effect on Rude. At this moment, a girl is casting magic. A powerful wind blade shoots out. Under this strike, the wasp collapses. Rude is somewhat surprised that the girl can use wind magic, but he doesn't forget to finish it off. The girl also discovers Rude's uniqueness, not only status ailment immunity, but also monster skills. Suddenly, the girl clutches her chest and kneels in pain. Rude quickly takes her out of the dungeon. Only then does the girl introduce herself. "I'm Alicia, an adventurer." This answer surprises Rude. She's actually the famous Emerald Storm Alicia, a member of a famous S-rank team in the Kingdom of Udias. Alicia doesn't deny it. Their team was defeated by monsters while challenging an S-rank dungeon 5 years ago. The captain sacrificed himself. One member was severely injured. Another member was swallowed by the dungeon, while she was cursed by the dungeon. The girl opens her collar. Though only a low-level curse, it has begun to spread. They tried various methods but could only slow the spread. Those adventurer hunters began implementing their plan after learning of this. Though she will eventually die, she doesn't want to be at anyone's mercy. Suddenly, Rude seems to think of something. He quickly checks his skills, indeed finding a substitution skill that can choose a target to take their attacks and abnormal status. Then Rude places his hand on Alicia's shoulder. Skill, substitution. A black aura spreads along his arm. At this time, Alicia realizes Rude wants to transfer the curse to himself. A huge phantom appears behind him. Just as the phantom prepares to erode Rude, skill status ailment immunity activates. Then the phantom disappears into thin air. Everything happens as Rude expected. After checking her guild card, Alicia finds her status has returned to normal. His status ailment immunity skill eliminated the curse. Alicia never imagined a stranger could do such a thing. Recently, Rude's village was attacked by monsters. His family and friends died as a result. At that time, an S-rank adventurer appeared and slayed the monsters. This became his goal to pursue. Before this, Alicia also wanted to gain more powerful strength. After removing the curse, she wants to challenge that dungeon once more, believing her companions are still deep in the dungeon. Therefore, she wants to form a team with Rude. The next day, the two come to Banama's fishing ground. A type of fish living in the water can be made into a delicacy, so they accepted the restaurant owner's quest. Suddenly, an attack shoots from the water. It's exactly the fish they're looking for, but the next second they're dumbfounded. Dense schools of fish surround them. Jenabu, level 23, has high-speed movement, water bullet, and sniper skills. Water bullets blast out. Rude quickly raises his sword to block, but then a rain of attacks strikes toward him. Because the footing on the boat is too small, he cannot dodge the attacks. Rude jumps directly into the water. Countless monster fish instantly surround him, but he looks excited. Skill, lightning cloak. Streams of lightning pour out. Then the fish float on the water surface. However, Rude is somewhat puzzled. These fish are clearly fewer. The fish in deeper waters didn't attack. He then explains the situation to Alicia. After tying the rope, he continues diving. A crab monster with tentacles on its back comes into view. Tentacle, level 38. Skills, paralysis, self-amputation, poison resistance, and accelerated healing. Scales grow at the ends of the opponent's tentacles. Moments later, they drop off. Rude's face is full of astonishment. The drop scales actually become aggressive Jinabu. Understanding the situation, Rude wants to swim up. However, he's firmly pulled by the opponent's tentacles. At the critical moment, he uses lightning cloak again. The opponent cuts off its tentacles when receiving lightning damage to avoid fatal injury. The crab monster charges at him again. Seeing this, Rude quickly pulls the rope and swims up. Alicia sees the commotion and quickly casts magic. This also disrupts the crab monster's attack rhythm. Rude tells Alicia about the underwater situation. There's a boss underwater, continuously producing Jenabu, and in water, the monster has greater advantage. At this moment, Rude seems to make a difficult decision. He has to tell Alicia his secret of devouring monster corpses. He simply says, "Please don't tell anyone else what you're about to see." The underwater monster doesn't know danger is approaching. Rude dives into the water again. Skill, high-speed swimming. Rude moves through the fish school like lightning. The monster's tentacles strike at him. He dodges using high-speed movement skills. In an instant, he reaches the monster. A sword pierces the monster's body. Skill, lightning shroud. A bolt of lightning suddenly explodes. One strike instantly kills the underwater monster, but when he returns to shore, he finds no one there. He thinks, indeed, no one would want to be with a freak. Moments later, Alicia emerges from the forest carrying firewood. She doesn't mind Rude's abnormal behavior. At night, Alicia again invites Rude to join her team. The two come to the guild management center. Alicia's identity as an S-rank adventurer greatly surprises the receptionist, but they don't understand why she would team up with an E-rank. Though Rude has gained some achievements, he still lacks battle records. The forest near Barona, home to Grey Wolves. Grey Wolf, level 11. Rude activates stealth skill and approaches from behind, catching them off off guard and slaying them. The commotion attracts more gray wolves. Seeing this, Alicia summons her spirit, using the spirit's power to cast magic. A deep trench suddenly appears before them. This scene truly surprises Rude. Suddenly, a gray wolf sneak attacks from behind Rude. Rude has no time to react. At the critical moment, Alicia uses wind magic to bring him into the air. Only then do they discover more gray wolves hidden in the forest watching them. Skill, echolocation. The positions of wolves hiding in the dark become crystal clear. Then it's a matter of Alicia pointing where to strike. The attacked gray wolves can only flee frantically. But this isn't Rude's real purpose. Rather, it's to gather them in one place. Rude, using stealth skill, suddenly appears. Skill, paralysis breath. Moments later, the surrounding gray wolves collapse. The two never expected the gray wolves to be so numerous. Only then does Rude remember Alicia's spirit magic. It turns out Alicia can summon her own spirits, using minimal magic power to extract their strength and cast powerful magic. The floating magic in the air is just one of their skills. Alicia has various souls of water, electricity, light, and wind. Only dark and fire souls cannot adapt to her. If souls don't merge with oneself, they consume much more magic power. Suddenly, thick smoke rises from a village not far ahead. There are monsters invading the village. Minotaur, level 27. The opponent can even cast magic. Ordinary villagers have no resistance against him. A flaming spear shoots from a magic circle. At the critical moment, a surging water column blocks it. Skill, water bullet. Seeing his attack ineffective, the goat monster seems displeased. Then it shifts its attack target. Baphomet, level 27, has fire and earth magic. Though the opponent is only level 27, lower than the lizard soldier, its attribute values are extremely high. At this moment, Rude has his eye on the opponent's magic skills. As long as he devours the opponent, he can obtain them. The opponent's flaming spears blast out. Rude dodges by moving aside, leaping up to slash at the opponent, but blocked by the opponent's steel claws, unable to advance even slightly. Just as he prepares to continue attacking, two flaming spears shoot toward his position. At the critical moment, he retreats to dodge. Alicia, who is evacuating villagers, can't help but worry. It looks like the opponent released all flaming spears, but actually kept two for defense. The two of them must cooperate to possibly defeat the opponent. Because villagers haven't completely evacuated, Alicia cannot use more powerful magic to fight. After determining the attack strategy, Rude grips his sword with both hands and charges, facing the incoming flaming spear without dodging, continuing to charge forward. Alicia's water magic follows closely behind. The two magics instantly collide. The opposing attribute magics cancel each other out. The next second, the opponent casts earth magic. Countless stones fly from the magic circle, while Alicia simultaneously uses earth magic. Both side stones collide together. Precise control actually avoids harming Rude. This is the strength of an S-rank adventurer. Rude leaps up and slashes. Skill, stamina amplification. This sword cuts off the opponent's steel claw. Just as it extends its steel claw to attack again, a rocket flies rapidly, piercing through its skull. The flames inside instantly explode. The unusual explosion draws villagers' attention. Alicia lies, claiming Baphomet escaped after this strike. Because the opponent might return, they need to continue pursuit. On the other side, in a forest, Rude is already cooking Baphomet's corpse. After Alicia takes some food, she also comes here to meet up. Her explanation convinces the villagers completely. Even without finding the monster's corpse, they won't suspect anything. Then it's time to enjoy the delicious monster corpse, successfully harvesting Baphomet's skills. Though Alicia mentally prepared herself, she still has reservations about devouring monster corpses. Suddenly, the nearby grass rustles. Several creatures with red fur on their heads appear. Pig, level 22, skill, flash step. Their numbers seem somewhat unexpected. Rude excitedly wants to cast magic, but the next second, the air seems frozen. Nothing happens. The opponents charge with flash step. When moving in a straight line for a certain distance, speed rapidly increases. After acceleration, destructive power multiplies. Rude looks grim. The opponent's actually knocked over his carefully prepared deodorized delicacy. Angry Rude's eyes glow red. Alicia intervenes in time. Because both of them have very little magic power left, they need to retreat beyond the pig's attack range. As soon as she finishes speaking, they quickly flee. The two hide on a tree branch. Alicia is curious why Rude cannot cast magic skills. Rude is also puzzled. This is the first time he's encountered this situation. With Alicia's reminder, he checks his skill attributes. The skills clearly exist but cannot be used, yet having the skills allows instinctive understanding of how to use them. Alicia pondered deeply, not because she couldn't understand magic and thus couldn't use it. In her view, Rudd could use fire magic, but it was just very weak. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration struck. Using monster skills required not magic power, but mana. So Rudd needed to know how to manipulate mana. He closed his eyes and thought, recalling that first time he devoured the Minotaur's corpse, the burst of power within his body, thinking about channeling this force from within his body outward. Alicia watched in astonishment at the scene before her. Rudd actually succeeded in casting spells. As long as one could sense mana, they could cast magic, like a part of one's own body. Several flame spears descended from the sky, crashing down on the pig. The pitch black night instantly blazed with fire. The commotion here attracted an even larger monster, the pig king with flames burning on its back, level 38. It charged toward them at breakneck speed. At the critical moment, Rudd activated his flash step skill to dodge the charge. Alicia hadn't even reacted before the opponent was right in front of them. She couldn't understand why such a monster would appear outside the labyrinth. Skills, flash step, fire resistance. Rudd activated earth magic. A massive fist formed of mud crashed toward the opponent, but it was instantly shattered by the opponent's charge. Unable to dodge in time, Rudd took the hit head on. He was sent flying back into a tree. The pig king continued charging toward Alicia. Alicia quickly summoned spirits to cast wind magic. Several wind blades flew toward the opponent, but her current strength couldn't penetrate the opponent's tough hide. Just as the opponent launched another attack, a sonic pressure wave struck. Skill, roar. This roar successfully drew the opponent's attention. If the battle became a war of attrition, Alicia would become its target. And aside from using flash step for straight line charges, the opponent had no other skills. Rudd gripped his greatsword tightly and slowly raised it. At the same time, the Pig King charged forward. Rudd felt the mana within his body, drawing it out and infusing it into his sword the moment they made contact. In the next second, he slashed toward the opponent. The opponent's massive body was split in two. This was his first attempt at infusing mana into a weapon. He hadn't expected it to succeed. Alicia was completely stunned. But the next second, the sword in his hand couldn't withstand the power and shattered. Meanwhile, on the 7th floor of the Miasma Labyrinth, a small party was attacked by miasma rats. Working together, the team slayed them. Suddenly, the swordsman noticed something unusual. There was actually a hidden staircase nearby. At the end, a treasure chest was placed. Inside the chest lay a greatsword that seemed to contain tremendous power. Fatty warned about the cursed power in the sword, but was refuted by his teammates. They believed this was a blessing from heaven. As they left, Fatty still glanced back at the chest. At that moment, the greatsword emanated a mysterious aura. The old man looked at the broken sword before him in disbelief, because brute force alone couldn't have severed it. He immediately thought that Rudd had infused something into the sword. Rudd and the old man before him had known each other for a long time, trusting each other. So Rudd told the old man his secret about gaining power by devouring monster corpses. But the old man's unsurprised expression was beyond Alicia's expectations. In his view, as long as it was good for Rudd, eating anything didn't matter. Rudd stated his purpose. He wanted a sword that could withstand mana. He even produced the harvested magic stones as forging materials. The value of the magic stones before him made the old man show surprise. Finally, he took out a sword and gave it to Rudd, but he warned him not to infuse mana into it. If it broke, they would need to compensate him. Just as they solved their weapon problem, the party from earlier appeared before them, wanting to join their group. But the next second, the leading swordsman collapsed to one side. The sword in his hand glowed red, continuously muttering the word kill. Suddenly, his expression became twisted. He turned and slashed at his teammate with his sword. The sudden turn of events left them stunned. Then he raised his sword to slash at Alicia. At the critical moment, Rudd quickly raised his sword to block. At this point, Roto's face was twisted beyond recognition. The surrounding adventurers rushed forward to stop him, but he slashed at them indiscriminately. Alicia, snapping out of it, cast wind magic, directly blowing the opponent out of the tavern. This scene stunned both of them. But what they hadn't expected was that the opponent was completely unharmed after taking the magic attack. Then the opponent charged toward them. Rudd quickly gripped his sword with both hands to defend, but the opponent's strength was clearly much greater. Roto, level 22, status berserk. Rudd looked at the appraisal information in disbelief. The opponent had fallen into madness. At the same time, Alicia cast wind magic again. This time it hit precisely as well. But the next second, she showed an expression of disbelief. The sword in Roto's hand was actually absorbing the wind magic's power. Visible, red aura emanated from the sword. Tentacles grew from the sword, wrapping around Roto. Only then did everyone realize this was a cursed sword. It could absorb magic to enhance its own power. After absorbing Alicia's wind magic, its power greatly increased. It slashed down at Rudd with one strike. The tremendous force made Rudd grit his teeth to endure. This power was completely different from before. The opponent's attacks came one after another. Rudd crouched down and slashed a bloody wound on the opponent's thigh. The next second, his eyes froze. The tentacles that grew out were actually sealing the wound. Alicia watched anxiously from the side but was helpless, because her magic attacks would only strengthen the opponent. They had to find a chance for a killing blow. Rudd thought about trying his substitute skill, transferring the opponent's curse to himself. When he had helped Alicia remove her curse, it took about 10 seconds. Now he had to find a way to restrain the opponent. A sudden fierce strike from the opponent made Rudd wince in pain, but he used this opportunity to lock the opponent's arm. Just as he was thrown off by the opponent, he activated earth magic. Several giant hands converged. The opponent couldn't absorb this type of physical magic. After a moment, he couldn't move. Skill substitute. Tremendous curse power burst forth. The opponent's expression also changed. A black aura appeared behind Rudd. The next second, he was repelled. He hadn't expected the substitute skill to fail. Roto was eroded by the curse again, and cracks appeared in the binding mud hands. Rudd was alarmed. It wasn't that Roto rejected his skill, but that the sword was resisting this power. Then he activated flame magic. At this point, Roto broke free from his restraints and dodged the attack. Rudd controlled the flames to strike again. Several fireballs flew toward his back, but the opponent blocked with a strange posture. The flame magic was absorbed by the opponent again. The red aura turned black. The opponent's power surged, tentacles completely enveloping Roto. Even his form changed, his entire body floating in the air. Rudd quickly used his appraisal skill. Two-headed curse, level unknown. In an instant, the opponent's sharp sword reached his eyes. Rudd quickly sidestepped to dodge, then raised his sword and charged forward. But with the opponent's casual strike, Rudd was sent flying. The opponent's power had increased again. Skilled techniques exactly like a warrior. Just as the opponent's sword was about to strike down, at the critical moment, Alicia circulated magic power throughout her body, enhancing her physical abilities. She kicked toward the opponent, immediately followed by a magic impact. The opponent's body crashed into the wall behind. Rudd hadn't expected that Alicia, as a mage, could also fight in close combat. Normally, mages would be helpless once enemies got close, but Alicia had her own unique methods. Facing the current two-headed curse, the only way to defeat it was to destroy its heart. Alicia's words were noticed by both of them. At this point, the battle entered white-hot intensity. The opponent could actually handle attacks from both Rudd and Alicia. Because it had two heads, its field of vision was much broader. Suddenly, Rudd thought of a method. He quickly told Alicia to retreat. Then he activated magic skills. But this time, it was only to raise dust and obscure the opponent's vision. A figure appeared beside the opponent. The opponent quickly swung his sword down, but discovered it was just a mud figure. At this moment, Rudd came up behind him, slashing his sword down toward the opponent's body. Seeing this, Alicia summoned an earth spirit. A spike pierced through the opponent's body. The spike didn't pierce the heart, failing to cause fatal damage. The opponent's greatsword swung down toward Alicia. At the critical moment, Fatty rushed over. At the same time, Blondie charged forward with tears in his eyes, sword raised, stabbing down toward the opponent's heart. Under this sword strike, the cursed power slowly dissipated. Roto's body also appeared, but there was no possibility of survival. Rudd looked at the cursed sword that had fallen to one side, thinking that even if he buried it somewhere, there would be another victim in the future. At this moment, the cursed sword continuously muttered the word kill. Status abnormality nullification activated. Unaffected by abnormal states, Rudd directly told it to shut up. Guild personnel finally arrived belatedly. Lancaster looked at Roto lying on the ground, and the cursed sword in Rudd's hand. He roughly guessed what had happened, after confirming that the cursed sword would bring negative effects that eroded the mind. Lancaster couldn't help but look at Rudd nearby. Rudd also revealed that he had the status abnormality nullification skill and thus wasn't affected, and stated that with the sword in his hands, there wouldn't be another victim. Lancaster thanked Rudd and Alicia for controlling the situation's development. Then he revealed another piece of bombshell information. Monsters outside the labyrinth had abnormally increased. According to investigation, these monsters came from the newly discovered Aberio labyrinth, and the investigation results seemed to indicate there was some kind of monster in the labyrinth, miasma dragon basilista. Lancaster had only read about it in books. This type of monster was at least level 70 or above. Besides combat power, it could also release high concentration miasma. Therefore, he speculated that this high concentration miasma had stimulated other monsters, causing them to flee the labyrinth. And to bring back these results, the investigation team was severely damaged and was still under treatment. If this continued to develop, miasma would seep out of the labyrinth, bringing catastrophic disaster. Understanding the consequences, Rudd agreed to Lancaster's request. Then they came to the medical room. Skill, substitute. Lancaster looked at the scene before him in disbelief. All the miasma erosion transferred to Rudd. He couldn't believe there was a skill that could nullify others' abnormal states. Rudd explained that as long as he touched others and they didn't refuse, he could transfer abnormal states. Now only he and Alicia could completely resist miasma erosion. This meant only the two of them could challenge the new labyrinth alone. In his view, the fewer people entering the labyrinth, the fewer people he had to protect, and the greater their chances of victory. After thinking for a moment, Lancaster agreed to Rudd's suggestion. He then entrusted Rudd with the guild quest to conquer the miasma dragon. However, what they hadn't expected was that miasma had already spread to the lower floors of the labyrinth. Goblins that shouldn't appear on this floor had even appeared, but the opponent was split in two under Rudd's single sword strike. The miasma spread was faster than they had anticipated. Alicia's purification items were becoming increasingly ineffective. Seeing this, Rudd became somewhat worried, but Alicia didn't want to repeat past mistakes by abandoning her teammate. Otherwise, she would never be able to forgive herself. As her words ended, Rudd placed his hand on her shoulder. Skill, substitute. He eliminated the miasma erosion on Alicia. As expected, as long as there was contact, he could eliminate the miasma's effect on the opponent. However, it would reaccumulate once they separated. Alicia then grasped Rudd's hand. The two went deeper, and the miasma became denser. Using echolocation confirmation, they discovered two monsters lurking ahead, and to survive in this environment, their strength must be stronger than ordinary monsters. Although they could take a detour, Rudd still wanted to face them head-on. Alicia immediately saw through his desire to eat the monsters, and Rudd awkwardly denied it. Cursed Swordgram, he wanted to test his strength before confronting the miasma dragon. Sure enough, two monsters appeared from the miasma. Rolling Beetle, level 33. Rudd activated Earth Magic. The opponent's location instantly exploded, but it didn't seem to take much damage. Then the opponent curled up and rolled toward them. Alicia's face lit up with excitement. She immediately summoned an earth spirit. Giant stone hands firmly grasped the opponent. Seeing this, Rudd quickly drew his sword and charged forward. One slash split the stone hand, but only left a shallow wound on the beetle's body. The damage was too superficial. The cursed sword hadn't unleashed its full power. Then he seemed to think of something, raising his sword and shouting to Alicia. Alicia instantly understood his intention. A gust of wind magic flew toward him. Rudd used the cursed sword to absorb this energy. At this moment, visible changes occurred. The beetle was instantly cut into several pieces. At this point, the beetle behind was already trembling, but it was still pierced by Rudd. Their first cooperation was surprisingly smooth. Then they cleared the miasma erosion from Alicia's body. Rudd awkwardly suggested devouring the beetle corpses, because magic power couldn't truly restore his stamina, and monster corpses could not only restore stamina but also increase mana. Alicia couldn't help but be curious about the cursed sword's power. Rudd felt that after the cursed sword absorbed magic, his physical abilities were greatly enhanced. Importantly, even when infused with mana, it wouldn't break. But the previous hand sword's single target attack seemed stronger. Hearing this, the cursed sword seemed displeased. A murmuring voice entered Rudd's mind. Give me magic stones to eat. Following the voice, Rudd came beside the beetle. He took out the beetle's magic crystal and placed it in front of the sword's eye. The eye extended several tentacles to wrap around the crystal, devouring it at a visible speed. Afterward, the sword body changed. Its size doubled, becoming a great sword. Alicia wondered why Rudd would know such things. Rudd didn't hide it, saying a voice had entered his mind that only he could hear. Perhaps because it heard him call it weak, it became displeased and spoke up. At this point, Rudd also figured out how to use the cursed sword. Suddenly, the ground began shaking. The labyrinth was actually collapsing. At the critical moment, Alicia summoned a wind spirit, lifting both of them into the air. At the last second, they escaped the collapsing floor. The labyrinth floor before them was pitch black. Skill, heat search. A giant creature appeared before them. Miasma dragon, basilista, level 75. It had various skills. Agility wasn't high, but its health exceeded 500. Its claws also contained poison. The opponent just looked once. A powerful sense of oppression hit them. Seeing this, the two could only use magic for long-range attacks, just as Alicia was about to summon spirits. Green light emanated from the miasma dragon's mouth as it launched an attack. Rudd thought about maintaining distance to observe the opponent's attack patterns. Alicia could barely hold on under the intense miasma erosion. A red light shot from the miasma. The miasma dragon breathed fierce flames that burst forth. At the critical moment, Rudd used flash step to dodge. The floor and pillars hit instantly melted. The miasma dragon's attack didn't stop. Alicia quickly summoned a wind spirit, attaching wind magic to Rudd's feet. His movement speed increased several times. He leaped up and swung his sword. However, the opponent's dragon scales were incredibly hard, only leaving a shallow wound. After stabilizing himself, he quickly told Alicia to continue attacking. Alicia fired several wind blades. The sharp wind blades still couldn't penetrate the dragon scales. Even using psychic magic failed to cause damage. The opponent only showed a few shallow marks, then its tail swept out. Countless spikes flew toward them. Skills wind escape. Skill steel body. Other spikes pierced into stone pillars. They hadn't expected the opponent to have not only strong defense but also ranged attacks. At this point, Alicia asked Rudd to buy her time. 5 colored magic orbs surrounded Alicia. The miasma dragon seemed to know Alicia's intention. It breathed fierce flames again to attack. Rudd quickly cast earth magic. Several stone fists emerged from underground, disrupting the opponent's rhythm. Then he leaped up and swung his great sword down. The bursting flames changed direction. At this moment, Alicia was completely defenseless. She could only rely on Rudd to hold off the miasma dragon. Alicia was about to pour all her magic power into this single attack. 5 elemental magics gathered before her. At the same time, the opponent seemed to sense danger. It actually activated dark magic. Several dark spikes emerged from a magic circle, rushing toward Alicia at extreme speed. At the critical moment, Rudd used the cursed sword to absorb the dark spikes. At this point, Alicia completed her charge. Skill, Spirit's Quintet, all abilities gathered at one point and fired. The opponent's location exploded. However, after the smoke cleared, the opponent still stood before them. Rudd used Substitute to clear the miasma from Alicia's body. At this point, Alicia had exhausted all her magic power. Now it's my turn to perform. Man and beast glared at each other. The opponent attacked first. Seeing this, Rudd quickly countered Skill, Roar, then raised his sword and charged forward rapidly. The miasma dragon's giant claw slammed down. Rudd used 90-degree flash step to dodge. After absorbing magic earlier, Rudd clearly felt the cursed sword's power had become stronger. 1 slash down. It indeed broke through the opponent's dragon scales. Then came continuous attacks. After a while, Rudd felt the cursed sword's power gradually weakening. The amplification effect from absorbing magic was gradually decreasing. The miasma dragon seemed to notice this too. It randomly unleashed a miasma shockwave in his direction. Although Rudd could be immune to miasma, he couldn't completely resist the shockwave's impact. The opponent's spikes followed immediately. At the critical moment, he used flash step to dodge. The miasma dragon's palm came head-on, hitting directly. Skill, steel body, but it only blocked part of the impact. He still flew backward. The wall behind was smashed with a large crater. The tremendous pain nearly made him fall unconscious. He remembered when he fell into the deep pit, he was similarly near death, but this time was different. Then a rock giant hand burst from the ground, blocking the opponent's attack. Rudd leaped up. At the same time, the miasma dragon breathed fierce flames. Skill, thread manipulation, weaving a giant net behind him. He knew ordinary attacks were ineffective. He could only use the slingshot effect to increase explosive force. The fierce flames burst forth. 2 forces collided together. He hadn't expected the cursed sword could absorb mana from the flames. Combined with his own mana, he could unleash a full power strike. Rudd endured the flame's scorching heat, unable to advance even an inch. Suddenly, he was wrapped in ice, resisting the flames. It turned out Alicia was casting ice magic from below, attaching it to Rudd. Finally, under magic's enhancement, he swung his sword, instantly splitting the opponent in 2. Labyrinth clearing quest complete. Because Alicia had very little magic left, he stopped Alicia from healing him, then activated the monster healing skill, Blood Drain. Streams of blood flowed from the monster corpse. After a moment, his stamina was restored, using the substitute skill to clear miasma from Alicia's body. Then the two came to the labyrinth's deepest part. At the room's end was a labyrinth core, with a magic circle in the middle. Only a very few adventurers could reach here, releasing magic before the core would transport them back to the labyrinth entrance. Normally, even after clearing monsters, the core wouldn't be destroyed, allowing repeated conquest. Because of this labyrinth, Rudd learned he could gain power by devouring monster corpses. His life changed afterward, so he was grateful for the opportunities the labyrinth brought him. However, to prevent the miasma dragon from reviving and miasma seeping from the labyrinth again, he unhesitatingly chose to raise his sword and strike down. On the other side, after Rudd entered the labyrinth, the Adventurers Association lost contact with them. They weren't clear what happened inside the labyrinth. There was no information about their return. When Rudd was called the miasma cleaner, Lancaster tried to mediate, but it had no effect. In this world, strength represented everything. Adventurers without strength were destined not to go far. At this moment, the door was pushed open. The story of the two conquering the labyrinth and destroying the core spread throughout the entire guild. On the other side, in a city near Verona, Rudd's actions ruined their plan to plunder the new labyrinth. Another person thought this was actually better, because the new labyrinth ownership rights were unclear. Now that the labyrinth was destroyed, they could demand compensation from Verona's Adventurers Guild. That night, the two cooked the miasma dragon's flesh. Venom Drake steak, level unknown, condition rare. The grilled meat's aroma made Alicia's mouth water, but she still couldn't accept devouring monster flesh. The next day, the Adventurers Guild confirmed the labyrinth conquest reward, 1.5 million gold coins. Rudd was instantly shocked. A burial labyrinth was level 70, and it was conquered by just 2 people, so the reward was this high. Next was updating Rudd's adventurer level. Currently Rudd was level 52, still a D rank adventurer. Generally leveling speed slowed after reaching level 40, but because Rudd constantly fought above his leveling speed was faster than normal. However, although Alicia was level 45, she was an S rank adventurer. It turned out level was just an indicator, while combat ability was defined through skill and personal experience. Suddenly a group of people walked in. They didn't put the surrounding people in their eyes at all. Rudd hadn't expected the person they were looking for would be himself. What surprised him even more was that the opponent was actually a neighboring city lord, Gore the city lord. Right off the bat, he questioned why Rudd destroyed a labyrinth that should have belonged to them. A burial labyrinth appeared at the border between 2 cities. They should have been able to profit from it, and their territory was damaged because of the labyrinth monsters. So how would they compensate for their losses? Gore the city lord had an aggressive attitude. At this point, Alicia stepped forward. Such negotiations should be between guilds, and currently there were no reports of monsters entering Gore's territory. This momentarily left the city lord speechless. At this moment, a man stepped out from behind the opponent. It was Gore Guild's president, who recognized Alicia as a survivor of the Emerald Storm team. But he didn't know Alicia had already broken her curse. He spoke provocatively, "Alicia, don't meddle in affairs that don't concern you. You're just a worthless survivor." Before he finished speaking, tremendous magic power erupted, instantly making him feel a trace of fear. To think he'd be scared by a level 45 girl. At this point, Lancaster appeared to stop this farce. He had them follow him inside. Then another man appeared. Rudd was speechless. Why were men appearing one after another? Alicia recognized the person's identity, an old teammate. The Emerald Storm team's story was deeply rooted in people's hearts, so the opponent immediately invited Alicia to join his team. She directly refused him, but he still pestered Alicia relentlessly, completely ignoring Rudd beside her. So Alicia could only tell the truth. Her curse had been lifted, and she had formed a new team with Rudd. Then she turned and left. Albert blamed everything on Rudd. He didn't believe Rudd could defeat the miasma dragon. He had just stolen Alicia's achievement. At this moment, Rudd seemed to sense a murderous aura. Looking at the level assessment document in hand, both were excited. D-rank adventurers skipped C rank and directly promoted to B rank. At this point, Albert appeared again, even cursing Barona Guild. Promoted to B rank based on others' achievements. Was Barona Guild full of idiots? This instantly aroused everyone's displeasure. But regardless, determining B rank qualification was entirely up to the guild's decision. Both sides were on edge, but the long-haired man still acted superior. "You all look like idiots." Anger was instantly ignited, but he was casually thrown out by Albert. Their strength levels were not in the same league. Alicia quickly spoke to stop them. At this point, the opponent pointed at Rudd. An incompetent adventurer only brings danger to other adventurers. Rudd accepted the opponent's challenge. Only strength could make others stay silent. Barona Guild training ground. Both sides were ready for battle. Albert leaped up and charged forward. A vertical slash was blocked by Rudd's raised sword. Then countless sword strikes swept in. His swordsmanship was clearly a level above. As an elf, he could use attack magic and enhancement magic in combat. Now the opponent was a magic swordsman. Suddenly the opponent flashed behind him. Rudd took a solid sword hit. He couldn't keep up with the opponent's speed with his eyes alone. At this point, Albert revealed his level, B rank adventurer. Only corresponding strength could be granted this level. In his view, Rudd didn't deserve this title. At this moment, Rudd's hand also gathered a magic circle. A massive fist burst from the ground. At the same time, Albert also cast magic. 2 energies collided, exploding instantly. But after the smoke cleared, the opponent had already condensed a magic orb, flying toward Rudd's position. But the next second, it was absorbed by the cursed sword. This scene completely exceeded Albert's expectations. The cursed sword's power doubled after absorbing magic, then quickly charged forward. The situation began to reverse. Albert had to retreat to create distance. He cast magic again, skill, lightning, attaching lightning to himself, charging forward with thunderous speed. Rudd couldn't dodge and was hit head-on. Waves of electricity coursed through his body. Albert confidently thought Rudd could no longer move after this strike, just when he thought it was over. Rudd clearly stood up. Status abnormality, paralysis nullified, then head-butted forward. Albert broke out in a cold sweat from this strike. The duel's outcome was decided. Meanwhile, both guilds were still discussing labyrinth compensation. However, the opponents were pushing their luck. Just then, the door was suddenly pushed open. A burial labyrinth was confirmed to have completely collapsed. The Abureo New Labyrinth suddenly experienced a catastrophic anomaly. A completely collapsed area was confirmed, with monster elements flooding out. Massive amounts of monster elements covered the surrounding area, with concentrations reaching B rank. Everyone's faces filled with shock, worried the anomaly would escalate. Intelligence reports indicated 2 gargoyles guarding the labyrinth entrance. Lancaster called a halt to the dispute between the 2 parties. Both sides remained unwilling, but they knew the situation was urgent. He made a decisive decision to form a subjugation force, immediately summoning B rank and above adventurers for reinforcement. Lancaster specifically proposed to include Rudd in the team. After adventurers from both associations gathered, Lancaster gave the subjugation force a complete briefing on the current situation they had. The report stated the labyrinth experienced a regression phenomenon, so they needed to officially dispatch everyone to execute an early subjugation of the Abureo labyrinth. Labyrinth regression was a rare evolutionary phenomenon for labyrinths, but this regression occurring in a collapsed labyrinth was a first-time special case, and the monster elements reached B rank. Rudd comforted Alicia, saying they were also B rank in strength, and they had A rank Lancaster, so there was no need to worry too much. Albert sighed helplessly and said, "You've stayed in D rank too long, you completely don't understand the severity of the situation. B rank monster elements outside the dungeon meant the internal monster element concentration likely reached A rank or above, possibly even S rank, and according to intelligence, the labyrinth was still continuously evolving. If the evolution completed, monster elements surging to the surface would cause devastating damage to Goral and Barona. Rudd's expression instantly turned serious upon hearing this, somewhat worried he couldn't handle the responsibility. Lancaster spoke up reassuringly. They discovered this quite early. If they handled it relatively quickly, they could also resolve it before things worsened, so there was no need to worry. Because Rudd had experience conquering the original labyrinth, this subjugation force needed to rely on him to lead the way. Everyone arrived at the labyrinth entrance where gargoyles guarded the door. The gargoyles were level 50. Skills: hard body, petrification breath, crisis perception, miasma resistance, earth magic principle, regeneration, and flame resistance. Everyone remained secretly vigilant. These two gargoyles were much stronger than rolling beetles. Suddenly, Rudd accidentally kicked a pebble at his feet. The sound instantly awakened the sleeping gargoyles. Rudd's heart tightened, inwardly crying out in alarm. The two gargoyles spread their wings and flew up, roaring as they charged fiercely at everyone. The gargoyles opened their mouths, using the skill petrification breath. Alicia urgently called out to Hilfeld to block this deadly skill attack. The gargoyle became enraged, angrily flying toward Alicia, wanting to tear her apart. Lancaster reacted extremely fast, landing a precise punch that struck the gargoyle hard. The force was tremendous. The gargoyle crashed heavily to the ground. Lancaster showed a look of disdain. Immediately after, the other gargoyle flew into a rage, redirecting its attack to pounce fiercely at Lancaster. The Gore Guildmaster chuckled lightly, then drew his blade cleanly and efficiently, severing the gargoyle's head with one strike. Rudd witnessed this scene, marveling at the Guildmaster's formidable strength. After handling the situation, everyone continued on their way, smoothly entering the labyrinth. Rudd stared at the gargoyle's corpse, pondering whether this monster could be eaten. He cast fire magic on the gargoyle's remains. The Guildmaster saw this and asked puzzledly what he was doing. Rudd said gargoyles possessed regeneration abilities, so he was delivering a final blow to prevent them from reviving. Seeing the Guildmaster leave reassured, Rudd sneakily picked up something when he wasn't paying attention and stuffed it into his bag. Inside the labyrinth, there was no longer the previous miasma, suggesting the dungeon's nature changed along with it. But Rudd felt the labyrinth terrain wasn't much different from when he conquered it before. However, the closer to the labyrinth's deep layers, the more variables there were. Even if the terrain remained unchanged, the monster's strength increased dramatically. Just as Alicia finished speaking, a large group of green monsters appeared before everyone. Lancaster immediately arranged the division of labor. He would face the largest one, leaving the small monsters for them to defeat. The Gore Guildmaster activated strengthening magic on everyone present. Everyone felt power surging within their bodies. Knowing this was an attack power enhancement effect, their confidence doubled. The small monsters rushing up at this moment were simply asking for death. Everyone's combat power increased dramatically, handling the small monsters with ease. Alicia's morale soared, also preparing to join the battle. However, seeing Rudd unmoving, she felt somewhat puzzled. Turns out his status abnormality nullification skill directly nullified the strengthening magic. Lancaster charged toward the largest monster. He gripped his giant axe tightly with both hands, monster elements flickering wildly on the axe blade. The monster roared as it charged at him. The giant axe struck down hard, actually splitting the monster in half by sheer force. But Rudd on the other side stood frozen in place. His status abnormality also nullified the support magic. The other adventurers closed in on the small monsters. Helmet Man confidently stated he would attract the fire himself. He shouted explosively, "Come at me if you dare." Skill, provoke. The monsters instantly rushed at him like a tide. Helmet Man activated his skill again, counter barrier. The powerful force sent all the monsters flying back. Now, Albert shot out like an arrow released from its bowstring. Skill, Thunder Emperor Sword. Lightning wrapped around the blade, electrocuting all the monsters it passed until they smoked. Pink-haired woman used the skill, Shadow Dance Run Dance. She frowned. These enemies' weak points were really too hard to find. They could only break through with firepower. Two skills activated simultaneously. Diamond Impact. Dark Arrow. After all the monsters were eliminated, everyone marveled at this teamwork that was beautiful to the extreme. Helmet Man reminded them his provoke skill was about to end, instructing everyone to be careful. The monsters could counterattack at any moment. Just as he finished speaking, abnormal movement suddenly came from underground. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Other monsters actually emerged from underground. A sharp sword light flashed, and the giant centipede died just like that. Helmet Man patted his chest with lingering fear, saying, "That was close. Be careful when you aim." Rudd was stunned. Not only were these people individually powerful, their teamwork coordination was even more terrifying. They didn't seem like a temporarily formed team at all. He discovered he completely couldn't help. At this moment, those green monsters stared intently at the centipede's corpse, like staring at prey. The next second, they drilled into the centipede's corpse like a tide. Rudd's pupils shrank sharply. These guys actually wanted to parasitize the corpse to become stronger. Rudd bit his teeth unwillingly. He could handle this too. He activated the skill, Earth Magic Principle. Several huge rocks wrapped in strong wind smashed toward the monster, but the monster raised its hand and manifested a barrier, steadily blocking the boulders. Rudd widened his eyes, his face full of disbelief. The rocks actually disappeared? This was its skill, Earth Sand Removal, which could directly eliminate earth and rocks. The Gore Guild Master stepped forward, cleanly severing the monster's head. He said, "As long as you cut down the parasitizing monster, you can easily resolve it." He glanced at Rudd, mocking, actually using earth magic against underground opponents. Foolish. Suddenly he discovered something else. This guy even nullified Warrior's honor. Rudd's heart sank to the bottom. He truly had had no group combat experience. If he couldn't even use his allies' support magic, he was nothing but a complete burden. Albert suddenly approached saying, "What are you doing? Can't keep up with our battle rhythm?" Cooperating with a team to defeat strong enemies is a lesson adventurers should learn from the very beginning. You may think you defeated me, but you're ultimately just a miasma scavenger. These harsh words completely ignited Rudd's competitive spirit. Just then, a huge explosion sound rang out. Everyone cried out, "Lancaster-san, are you all right?" Lancaster indicated he was fine. What was more important now was that these guys were successively parasitizing their companions' corpses, and they weren't just regenerating severed limbs, their combat power also increased dramatically. The Gore Guildmaster thought with only one enemy remaining, dealing with it should be easier. Just as he prepared to help, a sharp pain came from his neck. He violently grabbed down a small bug. Damn it, these guys' real purpose wasn't simple, but to use these inconspicuous small bugs to spread that deadly petrification poison. Everyone instantly froze into cold stone statues. Even the formidable Lancaster didn't escape. The monster smiled as it walked forward. Its antennae suddenly transformed, becoming incomparably sharp blades. The blade raised high, about to stab toward the petrified Lancaster. Rudd's eyes sharpened. He called out lowly, "Thread." Thread instantly entangled Lancaster. The sudden reversal left the face monster completely confused. Rudd forcefully pulled Lancaster to his side, glad he made it in time. Turns out his status abnormality nullification skill activated. The petrification effect was completely negated. Rudd extended his hand, gently touching Alicia's shoulder, using the substitute skill. The petrification on Alicia's body instantly receded, restoring her mobility. Alicia thanked him gratefully before preparing for battle. Rudd concentrated his mind, activating the appraisal skill on the monster. Comaeus, level 66, skills, fusion, regeneration, slime, petrification, mist. It had no troublesome magic resistance skills. They could first use magic to disrupt its movements, then attack. Alicia instantly understood using spirit summoning Earth Spirit, Nomia, and Wind Spirit, Hillfeld. Alicia ordered the two spirits to fight against Comaeus together. Wind magic and Earth magic launched simultaneously. Strong winds wrapped around several huge rocks heading toward the opponent. The opponent couldn't dodge in time. The boulders accurately hit it, knocking it far away. The opponent was knocked to the ground by the boulders, spewing black blood from its mouth. It angrily let out a roar, its face deforming from rage. Neither of them expected this monster could actually shapeshift, and its appearance after shapeshifting was extremely bizarre. Alicia felt disgusted even looking at it once. Comaeus suddenly opened its mouth wide. Countless small flying insects swarmed out from its mouth. Rudd's eyes turned cold, saying in a deep voice, "I'll blow them all away." Binding thunder! Lightning power instantly gathered. Powerful electric currents swept toward the opponent, instantly electrocuting all the flying insects. Soon they were burned to charcoal, falling from the air. At this moment, Lancaster showed some abnormality. The rocks on his body were continuously peeling off. Comaeus burned with rage, recklessly charging at them. Alicia immediately stepped forward, wanting to disrupt the monster's attack so it couldn't fight back. Under her magic power, the ground suddenly bulged up sharp spikes, fiercely launching the monster into the air. Right now, Rudd's figure instantly rushed forward rapidly. He leaped into the air. The cursed sword in his hand swung toward the monster with strong wind. The monster grunted in pain. It charged at Rudd at even faster speed. Alicia cried out in alarm, "Danger!" At the critical moment, Lancaster quickly rushed forward and rescued Rudd. Rudd, still shaken, hurriedly asked how Lancaster removed the petrification. Lancaster said he recovered normally by relying on the magic power circulation in his body, but he had to thank them both for helping delay time. But now wasn't the time to chat about this. It was time to thoroughly resolve that guy. Rudd volunteered, hoping to leave this to him. He slowly injected the monster elements from his body into the cursed sword. The long sword flickered with a faint light. Comaeus charged fiercely at Rudd with bared fangs and claws, but Rudd stood in place completely motionless, only waiting for an appropriate moment, until that guy rushed right in front of Rudd. Only then did he slowly raise his long sword, completely cutting the monster in half. He rejoiced inwardly, finally mastering the control technique for monster element infusion. The monster's fragments still wriggled, emitting bizarre calls from its mouth. Rudd knew clearly in his heart, Comaeus wanted to regenerate. He snorted coldly, saying, "Who gave you permission to continue regenerating?" Skill, deadly poison needle. Countless poison needles condensed and formed, shooting out like rain. Every needle stabbed into the monster's fragments. The deadly poison needle's power was astonishing, so strong that even the monster's regeneration speed couldn't keep up at all. Lancaster couldn't contain his curiosity, inquiring about Rudd's secret. Given the current situation, Rudd had no choice but to tell. Alicia also felt continuing to conceal wasn't a solution, telling Rudd to first use the substitute skill to help everyone remove petrification. Skill, substitute. Then Rudd told them the whole story. Everyone listened dumbfounded. This matter was extremely hard to believe, but Lancaster just witnessed it with his own eyes. He simply couldn't deny it. Albert became extremely excited, calling it a miracle. Rudd was speechless. He previously looked down on him as unworthy of being an adventurer. Twin-Tail Girl immediately urged them not to mind such small matters, and curiously inquired whether Rudd could really eat monsters. Rudd immediately proved it with action, taking out 2 monster heads, asking if he could cook them now. He actually stewed those 2 monsters. The finished product looked unexpectedly appetizing. First slowly simmer over low heat until thoroughly cooked, then use herbs to remove the fishy smell. The taste was unexpectedly quite good. Someone was tempted by the aroma, hurriedly reminding themselves not to be deceived by appearances. The Gore Guild Master curiously asked if Rudd could restore magic power while eating. Rudd said what was emanating wasn't magic power but monster elements. He was utterly shocked. These monster elements didn't have the evil aura of monsters, instead made people inexplicably feel sacred. Soon they returned to business. With insufficient intelligence on current labyrinth monsters, he proposed temporarily retreating to wait for reinforcements. Lancaster believed the longer the time, the more serious the labyrinth's anomaly would become, telling Rudd to finish eating and set out together. Rudd recalled the terrain. Going a bit further ahead was the Labyrinth Lord's room. Just as everyone prepared to advance, they were blocked. Only then did they remember last time when passing through the labyrinth. The ceiling here collapsed, coincidentally blocking the room's entrance. With the goal close at hand but unable to enter, they could only turn back and wait for reinforcements. But Rudd remembered Komaeus' skill just now, Earth Sand Removal, so he immediately stepped forward using the skill, Earth Sand Removal. The large expanse of rocks before them really gradually dissipated. Looking at the unobstructed path, everyone showed expressions of delight. Everyone no longer hesitated, advancing toward the Labyrinth Lord's room. Just stepping into the room, everyone was stunned by the scene before them. Before them was actually a huge glowing egg. This was the legendary Sage Dragon's egg. Lancaster had seen records about it in documents. The Sage Dragon could continuously die and resurrect. When its physical body perished, its soul would reincarnate, using the labyrinth as a nest to complete resurrection. Even if the physical body disappeared, its consciousness would remain in its soul, able to understand human language, even see through the future. Helmet Man completely didn't care, it was just an unhatched egg anyway. He wanted to subjugate it before the egg hatched. Lancaster was shocked and alarmed at this, hurriedly calling out to stop him, but it was still a step too late. The next second, Helmet Man was knocked flying by a tentacle. After landing, he violently coughed up blood, seriously injured. His companions hurriedly stepped forward to help him up. Just then, that dragon egg actually started moving. Everyone's nerves instantly tensed. That was just the egg's defensive instinct. Lancaster told Helmet Man to step down and rest. Rudd tried to appraise the dragon egg, but discovered the Sage Dragon's level was 1, and all ability values were hidden. Someone proposed retreating to wait for support, but if the dragon egg successfully hatched, even S-rank powerhouses would have difficulty stopping it. Lancaster decided to defeat it right here. The matter of reinforcements could be discussed afterward. Everyone quickly formulated tactics. Target the dragon egg's feet, first make it lose balance. Taking advantage of the dragon egg's instability, Lancaster rushed up without hesitation. He gripped the giant axe tightly with both hands, striking down hard at the dragon egg's foot. One of the dragon egg's feet was instantly severed. The dragon egg, missing one foot, instantly lost balance, swaying unsteadily, but the next second, the severed foot actually rapidly regenerated. Looking at this abnormal recovery speed, everyone was stunned. Lancaster turned to look at Rudd, his tone urgent as he asked him for a favor. Just then, the Sage Dragon's egg opened its eyes. It began struggling and crying out, looking like it would break out of its shell at any moment. That unpleasant cry had extreme penetrating power, making everyone suffer unbearably. During this interval, Rudd and Lancaster reached cooperation. Lancaster endured the discomfort and stepped forward again. Finding the right moment, he severed another of the dragon egg's feet. About to land, he was entangled by the dragon egg's tentacles. He didn't expect the dragon egg could actually attack by surprise through the underground. The Gore Guild Master and Albert saw this, immediately severing the tentacle about to attack Lancaster. Lancaster softly thanked them, stabilizing his stance again. He gathered all his body's strength and swung the giant axe again, precisely severing the dragon egg's thickest foot. The dragon egg, losing critical support, immediately swayed incessantly. Rudd seized the opportunity, mobilizing all the monster elements in his body, pouring them all into the cursed sword in his hand. Accompanied by the sharp sound of breaking wind, the cursed sword fiercely split the dragon egg open from the middle. Albert just happily praised him for doing beautifully. The next second, he discovered something wrong. Rudd's fatal strike didn't cause damage to the main body inside the egg. Alicia saw this and immediately released Windblade, hoping to take the opportunity to deliver a heavy blow to the Sage Dragon. But the dragon egg actually closed before the Windblade hit. A sense of powerlessness immediately surged up. This terrifying regeneration ability, if they kept fighting, there would truly be no end. A bone-chilling feeling surged up. The dragon egg actually started shaking violently. Everyone immediately sensed something wrong with this dragon egg. Amidst the loud noise, the Sage Dragon seemed about to hatch. Lancaster's heart tightened, saying, "There's no time, we must fight quickly and decisively." He made a decisive decision to formulate a plan. They would now strike with full force. Although the opponent's regeneration ability was terrifying, the dragon egg base's leg endurance definitely wasn't strong. He needed everyone to attack together simultaneously with him, making the dragon egg show an opening. Everyone immediately responded, proactively stating which part they were responsible for. Soon everyone confirmed their targets. The Gore Guild Master handled one alone, the remaining weaker adventurers were all in groups of 2. After dividing responsibilities, everyone rushed forward together, finding the foot they were responsible for and preparing to act. Sensing their approach, the spikes on the dragon egg's surface suddenly shot toward everyone like a rainstorm. Everyone was caught off guard, hurriedly swinging weapons to block the spike attacks. Twin Tail Girl used magic barrier. A light wall rose up, steadily blocking the deadly attack for Lancaster. She said, "I'll protect you, just focus on attacking." Lancaster began gathering magic power. The magic power for the next attack was wildly surging. Magic power surged around Lancaster. Obviously, he had entered full charging state. Alicia showed a difficult expression. How could they synchronously destroy 4 feet under this chaos? Rudd said, "Leave it to me. Skill command." The voice directly transmitted into everyone's minds. Someone couldn't help but marvel inwardly. This skill was too interesting. Rudd said, "Listen to my countdown. When I count to 1, simultaneously sever its feet." Everyone's spirits lifted, responding in unison. Okay, 5-second countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When the moment arrived, everyone acted simultaneously, blades pointing straight at the dragon egg's 4 feet. With several crisp sounds, the dragon egg's 4 feet were severed simultaneously. The dragon egg, losing support, crashed heavily to the ground. Rudd immediately said to Lancaster, "Strike." Lancaster was already prepared. With a sound, the giant axe fiercely penetrated the dragon egg. The dragon egg finally completely lost movement and fell to the ground. This time they finally succeeded. Lancaster's steps staggered. Obviously, this strike exhausted all his strength. The Gore Guild Master hurriedly stepped forward to support him. Although he was very unwilling, he had to admit with them there was no opponent they couldn't defeat. Long-haired man said he and Helmet Man had no injuries or life threats threatening danger. Everyone's tense nerves finally relaxed. This was their complete victory. Pink-haired woman hid in the corner, coldly mocking this naive group. She wanted to secretly recover the sage dragon's magic stone. She could make a fortune when she returned. But searching everywhere, she discovered there was no magic stone anywhere. She wondered in her heart, searching around. A tentacle quietly extended from the ground behind her. The tentacle struck like lightning. Pink-haired woman had no time to dodge at all. With a sound, the tentacle fiercely pierced through pink-haired woman's body. Pink-haired woman immediately died. A cold voice rang out in the darkness. This reincarnation failed. It despised this body of its own. This was a defective product. This couldn't last long either. It could only look forward to the next reincarnation. But before that, regarding these people who interfered with its reincarnation, it must kill them all. At this moment, the Gore Guild Master instantly became alert. The monster's aura actually hadn't completely dissipated. Seeing this, it no longer hid, showing its claws to everyone opposite. Sage Dragon Orpheus, level 1, all ability values hidden. Why was it still alive? Could it have burrowed into the ground to avoid the fatal strike? Orpheus spoke out, rebuking everyone for actually defying God. True dragons with the highest status among dragon race were close to divine beings, able to understand and use human language. Orpheus's gaze swept over everyone, expressing disgust at sensing nauseating impurities from them. Those impurities left them with human shells, but inside they were no different from monsters. Twin Tail Girl saw this and immediately stated she couldn't continue fighting with everyone. Skill, binding coil. Darkness tightly wrapped around her, she completely concealed her form. The next second, Orpheus's claw suddenly fell off. Orpheus's body already started decomposing. Long-haired man saw the sage dragon was starting to decay. A glimmer of hope ignited in his heart. If they were to attack, it had to be now. But Lancaster just used absolute air. His body needed time to recover. Helmet Man saw Orpheus and was terrified, saying, "What kind of monster is this?" He had no way to continue fighting. With no choice, he chose to flee, turning and rushing toward the exit. But Orpheus didn't plan to let him go. It immediately activated telekinesis. The stone pillar not far away instantly broke in response. The broken stone pillar flew toward Helmet Man's direction with a whistling sound. The stone pillar crashed heavily at the exit, completely blocking the only escape route. No one could escape from its hands. Even with only its left hand remaining, catching them was simply no problem. Lancaster made up his mind. There was already no way out, then let it see how terrifying cornered prey could be. Everyone seemed to have their fighting spirit ignited, simultaneously rising and charging toward Orpheus. They attacked different parts of the sage dragon with tacit coordination, trying to find its weak point, but unexpectedly, all attacks failed. They couldn't even break through the opponent's defense. Their every move was seen through by it. They simply couldn't pose any threat to Orpheus. Orpheus said disdainfully, "Only this level? Make me more excited." It suddenly activated the skill heaven-breaking attack. Powerful force instantly spread out. Everyone was fiercely bounced back by this force, falling in complete disarray. Alicia anxiously called out to Rudd, asking if he was injured. Rudd struggled to get up, indicating he was fine, but that battle just now had exhausted his monster elements. Alicia looked at Rudd with determined eyes, saying she would use the spirit's quintuple to resolve Orpheus. But she needed Rudd to relay this message to everyone. Rudd immediately nodded in agreement, informing everyone that Alicia would use a powerful attack next, reminding everyone to cooperate with the timing to dodge the attack, absolutely not to be caught up in it. Alicia's voice was incredibly firm, saying, "Everyone lend me your strength." As soon as she finished speaking, magic power of 5 elements gathered like a tide, surrounding Alicia. Everyone was still struggling against Orpheus. Alicia shouted loudly toward Rudd, "Right now, skill spirit's quintuple!" Powerful magic power instantly completely surrounded Orpheus. The next second, a huge explosion sound rang out thunderously. The intense shockwave hit, everyone retreated to avoid it. Someone nervously inquired, "Did we kill it?" But when the smoke cleared, Orpheus was still there, just suffering some light injuries. Orpheus was somewhat annoyed. It was still careless, actually underestimating them. Lancaster seized this brief gap, wanting to sneak attack while it was unprepared, but he was discovered by Orpheus just as he charged out. Watching Lancaster being sent flying, long-haired man's heart filled with anxiety. He cursed angrily, immediately activating his skill. Several thick vines broke through the ground, tightly entangling Orpheus. Albert seized the opportunity, holding his sword to deliver a fatal blow to Orpheus. Got it! Albert rejoiced in his heart, but the next second came the crisp sound of metal breaking. His sword actually broke directly. Clearly, he had precisely grasped the blind spot to attack, yet it still didn't work. Before Albert could react, Orpheus's counterattack immediately followed. Orpheus easily broke free from the vines, snorting coldly, saying, "How unpleasant," then condensing a huge magic powerball. The magic powerball struck heavily on long-haired man. Alicia looked at her fallen companion, her voice choked, full of despair and self-blame. She believed it was all because her power wasn't enough, that once again she couldn't save everyone. Remembering past failures, Alicia's tears could no longer be held back. Orpheus slowly walked toward Alicia, saying it would kill her with respect, making her become nourishment for its wisdom. Rudd's pupils shrank sharply. She was completely no match for Orpheus. They must retreat quickly. As long as they could hold out until the escape magic circle at the labyrinth core, there was still hope. He gritted his teeth and urged magic power, releasing the skill thread. But the expected thread didn't appear. How could this be? Could the monster elements in his body already be exhausted? If this continued, everyone would die here. He must immediately replenish monster elements. The instant he turned his head, he saw the dragon egg beside him. That dragon egg was emanating a rich fragrance of monster elements. Rudd stared at the dragon egg and swallowed hard, a crazy thought growing. Orpheus used the skill, Petrification Sigh. Alicia hurriedly summoned the wind spirit. Windblade shot through the air, completely neutralizing Orpheus's Petrification Sigh. The Gore Guild Master took the opportunity to use his ultimate move. Flying Blade struck hard toward Orpheus, but it blocked this strike with a summoned rock wall. Immediately after, the two pursued the victory, using Water Bullet and Air Slash. They failed once again. Water Bullet and Air Slash were all bounced back by Orpheus. The Gore Guild Master was puzzled. Just how many skills did did this, monster master? Orpheus's lips curved into a mocking smile. Then try this move. Lancaster executed the skill. The Gore Guild master discovered this was Lancaster's absolute heir. Could it being called the Sage Dragon mean it could quickly learn opponent's skills? A chill shot straight to the top of his head, but fortunately when the skill activated, that person would be completely defenseless. This was an excellent opportunity for a sneak attack. Alicia immediately called out to Uldyr and Wakyan. Water Binding Sword and Water Thunder Blade covered the Gore Guild master's sword. The two joined forces to activate the strongest move, roaring as they struck hard toward Orpheus. But Orpheus didn't move an inch. The Gore Guild master's heart sank. Damn, it's a trap. Orpheus suddenly struck, claws instantly piercing through his chest. Alicia watched this scene in horror. Before she could react, Orpheus had already grabbed Uldyr. It said with amusement, "And spirit? How rare. I wonder what it tastes like?" Alicia's eyes blazed with fury as she roared for it to stop. But Orpheus turned a deaf ear and opened its massive jaws, tossing the spirit into its mouth. A crisp, crunching sound rang out. Alicia trembled with rage. Tears instantly blurred her vision. Orpheus said in a leisurely manner, "Charge-up skills are only worth the risk against strong opponents. This is a weakling's gambit, risking exposure to seize a chance at greater power. You're nothing but lowly rats, not worthy of such tactics from me." The reason it used this technique to deceive them was to savor her expression, twisted by despair. With that, it invited Alicia to taste what her spirit was like. Its massive jaws slowly opened, and a foul stench hit her face. At this critical moment, a figure wrapped in demonic energy rushed forward and sent it flying with a single punch. Alicia looked at that familiar silhouette, her eyes full of shock. Rudd's entire body was entangled with dense monster elements, as if he might lose control at any moment. Orpheus, due to the heavy blow it just received, had one eyeball fall to the ground. It let out a pained groan. This body was far too incomplete. Orpheus stared at Rudd in surprise and said, "Did you eat my eggshell and transform into a demon?" Rudd only felt the monster elements churning violently within him, the berserk power rampaging everywhere, completely beyond control. Alicia immediately rushed forward to check on Rudd's condition. Afraid of hurting her, Rudd quickly pushed her away. Orpheus said, "To devour such massive monster elements without becoming a demon, how interesting. Too bad you won't last much longer. You're not even worth my effort." Rudd felt like a ball of fire was burning inside his body, his consciousness being devoured by madness. He felt his body was about to be consumed by the monster elements, no longer his own. Suddenly a figure slowly materialized, saying, "Your monster element's control is terrible." The twin-tailed girl's fingertips sparkled with magic as she said, "Since you're this bad at it, let me help you." A gentle power flowed into his body. Rudd discovered that the berserk monster elements was naturally integrating into his body. Orpheus was filled with shock, unable to believe someone could neutralize its monster elements. The twin-tailed girl lifted her chin and said, "Now go defeat that lizard clinging to life." Hearing the word lizard, Orpheus flew into a rage. How dare anyone show such disrespect to a god? It roared as it charged at the two of them. But the twin-tailed girl showed no fear whatsoever. Rudd's power surged throughout his body as he immediately rushed to the front line. With one swift strike of his blade, he completely severed Orpheus in two with just a single sword slash. The girl clapped her hands and laughed, "Well done!" After slaying Orpheus, Rudd immediately began treating his companion's injuries. Though the emergency treatment was complete, the wounds were too deep to heal quickly. The twin-tailed girl urged him to speed up the treatment. Besides the two of them, everyone else was seriously injured, and with only two of them, there was no way to evacuate so many severely wounded. Should they wait for backup and slowly transport them back one by one, or go out to find reinforcements? Before he could think of a solution, Rudd's heart suddenly ached, and he bent over coughing violently. This was the side effect of forcibly controlling the monster elements. Although the twin-tailed girl had helped him forcibly control the monster elements, his enhanced body had already reached its limit. Orpheus roared unwillingly. It would never allow everyone to leave. Everyone must be buried with it. At that moment, the labyrinth entrance began to collapse. The sound of the cave-in made their hearts skip a beat. It turned out Orpheus had long since replaced the labyrinth's core. The twin-tailed girl urgently urged Rudd to flee. Suddenly, a massive boulder came crashing toward Alicia. Rudd's pupils contracted sharply as he threw him spirit over her without hesitation to shield her. Alicia slowly regained consciousness, weakly looking at Rudd, who was blocking in front of her. Rudd informed her that the sage dragon had been slain, and they needed to evacuate immediately. Alicia showed a faint relieved smile, then coughed violently. Her body was extremely weak. Her magic power was completely depleted, and her body couldn't move at all. She pushed Rudd to flee quickly, not wanting to be a burden. Hearing this, Rudd blamed him spirit for failing to protect Alicia. The twin-tailed girl urged him again. If they didn't run now, they'd really be buried alive. But Rudd was exceptionally resolute. Standing firm before his companions, he couldn't abandon everyone and flee alone. The twin-tailed girl sighed heavily and said, "Although I really like you, your choice is wrong." With those words, she left without looking back. Rudd struggled internally, the thought of escaping alone with Alicia flashing through his mind. But that would mean abandoning his other companions. He couldn't do it. He frantically searched for a way to save everyone. Alicia pleaded with him again to escape quickly. Seeing Rudd wouldn't listen, she roared, "I did this before!" "Because I knew that was what my companions wished. It's the same now. Everyone wants you to live." Lancaster also woke up and said to Rudd, "Hurry and escape. In an adventurer's career, experiencing the pain of losing companions is inevitable. But letting survivors live is showing respect to those who willingly chose to sacrifice themselves." In the darkness, a swarm of green monsters suddenly emerged, slowly closing in on the severely wounded. Albert instantly became alert. The labyrinth's monsters had already gathered. Rudd gripped the cursed sword in his hand, vowing that no one would die here. His companions' urging voices rose one after another, all hoping Rudd would survive. One monster took the lead in attacking Rudd. Rudd's eyes flashed coldly as he instantly cleaved the monster in two. He roared his refusal to flee alone. He had always been called a miasma scavenger, always looked down upon. When Alicia invited him to become a companion, when his secret was accepted, he was truly happy. When he was genuinely accepted by everyone in the guild, he was also overjoyed. He couldn't leave companions who trusted and recognized him like this, and he absolutely would not flee alone. He remembered someone once warned him that no matter how much pain he encountered, he couldn't retreat. Rudd channeled all his emotions into power and slaughtered all the approaching monsters. Suddenly, what appeared before everyone's eyes left them all stunned. A swarm of small monsters parasitized on Orpheus's body, actually bringing it back to life. Rudd's eyes sharpened. He absolutely would not give up. Orpheus once again lunged savagely toward Rudd. Rudd leaped up, raised the cursed sword, and slashed at the monster with all his might. What caught everyone off guard was that the monster's mouth actually concealed a tumor. That tumor suddenly opened like sharp jaws and bit down hard on Rudd's arm. Rudd couldn't help but let out a painful scream. He gritted his teeth and endured the severe pain, still refusing to give up. Skill, spirit amputation. Rudd's right hand broke off with a snap, and he finally managed to break free. He bore the pain. Skill, regeneration. A new arm quickly grew out, and he didn't hesitate to grip the cursed sword again. He roared as he charged madly at Orpheus, piercing his sword precisely into its heart. Skill, binding thunder. He panted heavily, silently praying for his opponent to fall, but Orpheus continued to struggle, continuously roaring that it would kill everyone. Its tentacles suddenly transformed into blades and struck Rudd viciously with a fierce whistling sound. Rudd took the heavy blow, his body flying backward uncontrollably. Just as he was about to hit the ground, a strong hand steadily caught him. Rudd weakly looked up and asked, "Who are you?" The person's voice was gentle, praising Rudd for doing well. He would bring everyone back alive. The man said mockingly, "Not only did your reincarnation fail, but you've even been parasitized by monsters. How pitiful." Hearing this, Orpheus was furious. Countless vines shot out wildly from underground. Rudd's heart tightened. This was bad. The vines had already coiled toward him like venomous serpents. The man swung his longsword once, and all the vines were easily severed. Orpheus seized this opening to leap into the air and swing a right hook, but it was easily blocked by him. The man coldly questioned whether it still remembered the death battle from 5 years ago. Back then, Orpheus had a sacred and inviolable presence. It had driven them completely into a corner, but now it had fallen to such a state. Truly a far cry from before. Orpheus, struck at its sore spot, roared furiously, wanting him to shut up. Before it could finish speaking, it was cleaved in half by him, and could never speak another word. Rudd was utterly shocked. This was the legendary power of an S rank. The man immediately followed up with several more strikes, ensuring it would never have a chance to revive. The labyrinth collapsed again. Debris came crashing toward the defenseless Alicia. Rudd rushed toward Alicia, but he was too far away. He wouldn't make it in time. Skill, frozen hell. The rocks that were about to fall were instantly frozen into ice sculptures. Alicia looked completely stunned. The collapse had been forcibly stopped by this ice magic. This move seemed somewhat familiar. At that moment, Serena walked in, complaining that the monsters in this labyrinth were disgustingly unpleasant. She couldn't help but grumble that Leonidas always acted alone, leaving them all behind. Awu followed closely behind, nodding in agreement, clearly long accustomed to Leonidas's recklessness. Serena suddenly exclaimed, it was Alicia, whom she hadn't seen in ages. Only then did she notice that everyone was covered in wounds. She immediately called to Awu, telling him to quickly heal everyone. Skill, holy healing light. A warm glow enveloped everyone. The pain in everyone's bodies gradually faded. Such large-scale healing magic, plus the legendary power of the soul healing crest. Everyone knew this person had considerable skill. Awu informed everyone that their injuries had healed, but this didn't mean their magic power had recovered. To recover, they must rest quietly. However, he couldn't revive life that had lost its soul. Seeing this, Leonidas immediately decided to have everyone evacuate the labyrinth quickly. Everyone helped each other, supporting or carrying those who couldn't walk. Together they headed toward the exit. Alicia suddenly gestured to Rudd with her eyes, saying he could take the sage dragon's corpse with him. Everyone sat around the campfire. Leonidas took out Orpheus's soul fragment. This fragment needed a long period of time to repair the soul and complete its resurrection. 5 years ago, the Lion's Lightwing successfully subjugated the sage dragon Orpheus. The soul fragments collected back then should have been securely stored in the royal capital, yet now it had been resurrected on the Barona border. This was because the royal capital's storage vault had recently been invaded. Hearing this, Lancaster's face was full of disbelief. This resurrection of Orpheus was orchestrated by someone to trigger a labyrinth rampage. No one had expected such a conspiracy behind this incident. Serena invited Alicia to join the team. With her, the team's combat power would greatly increase. Alicia helplessly indicated that her level had dropped, and their goals were different. She politely declined. Serena sighed helplessly. Once Alicia made up her mind, she was stubborn, but her own team really left her speechless. Every member had a strange personality, a carefree captain, a taciturn muscle man, and a stick-thin bookworm. The smell of men was suffocating. Seeing that Rudd hadn't been speaking, Leonidas asked if he was troubled. Rudd gathered his courage and spoke up, admitting he was from Taina village, not far to the east of here. Leonidas had once saved his life. Leonidas might not remember this incident, but he had always been Rudd's hero. Leonidas suddenly understood. So Rudd was that boy from back then. He hadn't expected Rudd to actually persist and make it through. Leonidas had always blamed him Spirit for that day, thinking if he'd been faster, he might have saved the entire village. It was precisely because of this guilt that he developed the habit of rushing recklessly into situations, causing quite a bit of trouble. Leonidas praised Rudd as a remarkable adventurer. Thanks to their early response, losses were minimized. This made Rudd feel incredibly honored. Lancaster's expression turned grave as he called out to Rudd. The dangerous incident in the royal capital concerned him greatly. He wanted to strengthen Barona's defenses and establish a new guard unit, and he wanted to invite Rudd to become the captain of this squad. Rudd couldn't believe it. Lancaster was asking him to be captain. After much consideration, he still firmly refused the captain position. Lancaster wasn't displeased, only curiously asked what Rudd's reason for refusing was. Rudd admitted that this labyrinth raid made him see his own immaturity, and he understood that without sufficient strength, he couldn't protect his important companions. He became an adventurer because of Leonidas. Although the gap in strength between him and Leonidas was vast now, one day he would definitely become strong enough to stand alongside Leonidas, and he would definitely explore the abyss labyrinths together with Alicia. Alicia smiled in response. Of course, my partner. Lancaster nodded understandingly. Since Rudd had goals he must accomplish, he wouldn't force him. Rudd revealed he wanted to leave Verona and travel to other places to continue growing, but Owu suddenly leaned in, bluntly saying he was very interested in him. What was wrapped around Rudd's body was something different from magic power. He guessed it was monster elements. But monster elements attaching to a human body was simply impossible, unless Rudd had eaten monsters. Hearing this, Serena instantly became alert, sharply ordering everyone to back away. She conjured countless ice shards aimed at Rudd. Serena's eyes turned cold as she demanded to know if he really had eaten monsters. She would decide whether to kill him based on his answer. Seeing this, Owu sighed helplessly and immediately activated a control skill. Countless vines instantly shot out from underground. Unexpectedly, those vines instantly wrapped Serena tightly. Owu gently urged her to calm down and hear his explanation. Serena struggled with all her might. Consuming monsters was a serious crime. There was no way there wouldn't be any problems. But Rudd really was a special case. Owu detected no signs of him becoming a monster. He couldn't even sense the slightest evil aura from the monster elements. He'd never encountered such a situation. Leonidas apologized to Rudd. They had recently been tracking the bandits who attacked the royal capital's storage vault. Since some monster elements remained in the vault, they deduced monsters were involved. Seeing this, Rudd expressed understanding and revealed everything about his experiences during this time. After hearing everything, everyone finally knew how Rudd had managed to survive. Status abnormality nullification skill. Such a skill was indeed rare. But this also explained why monster elements had no effect on Rudd. Serena looked full of guilt and apologized for her earlier rudeness. Rudd expressed understanding frankly. Owu was curious. He could absorb monster skills but apparently couldn't inherit monster physical characteristics. For example, eating fish-type monsters didn't allow him to breathe with gills. Hearing this, Leonidas had a sudden inspiration, asking Alicia if she had also eaten monsters. Alicia was caught off guard, recalling previous memories. She quickly waved her hands, denying the memory of drooling, firmly stating she had never eaten them nor thought of eating them. Leonidas was actually curious whether other people eating monsters could also gain skills or absorb monster elements. Alicia quickly said no, eating monsters was taboo. What if someone accidentally became a monster? But Leonidas still wouldn't give up, thinking that using substitution could solve the problem. Rudd immediately denied this, shattering his unrealistic fantasy. Anyone other than him who ate monsters would only have two symptoms: becoming a monster or death. Everyone gasped. They hadn't expected the possibility of direct death. When Rudd first consumed monsters, the monster elements ran wild in his body and nearly made him lose his sanity. Only his desire for revenge kept him going. Fortunately, his body had now adapted to the monster elements, and the side effects had almost disappeared, and he had previously experienced failed substitution attempts. Hearing this, Leonidas sighed. There were still many mysteries about monster elements for them to explore. However, he was very interested in Rudd's monster elements. He really wanted to see it. Although he understood the principle of monster elements, he knew very little about it. He wanted to experience it firsthand. After all, as an adventurer, only real combat could provide genuine understanding. Deep in the forest, a level 8 rabbit appeared. Leonidas eagerly approached the rabbit. Soon, a fragrant spice-roasted rabbit was ready. Rudd couldn't wait to dig in. The tender texture made him exclaim how delicious it was. Before long, he had learned the jump skill. Everyone clicked their tongues in amazement. They had to use items or rest to recover magic power. Rudd could quickly recover monster elements just by eating monsters. How convenient. Rudd patted his belly, saying he was ready. His condition was now optimal. So Leonidas activated the hidden courtyard, an alternate space imbued with plant power that couldn't be interfered with from outside. He made an inviting gesture, inviting Rudd and OU to enter the exclusive training space. This space was isolated from all external interference, making it an ideal training sanctuary. Here the two could fight freely without concern. No skills would damage this space. Everything was ready. Leonidas' eyes burned with intensity, eager to begin battle. He indicated Rudd needn't be polite and could attack at will. Skill, air slash, right off the bat, the Morpho Butterfly skill. Leonidas highly approved, confirming he could truly manipulate monster skills. Leonidas raised his sword and easily blocked all his attacks. Skill, thread, but it was easily severed by Leonidas' sword. To him, this was mere child's play. Then a cloud of smoke dispersed. Leonidas was slightly surprised. This is paralysis sigh. Taking advantage of his inattention, Rudd attacked from behind, but Leonidas easily deflected it, mocking him for being too naive. These little tricks couldn't hurt him one bit. Rudd was provoked, his emotions gradually becoming unstable. He unleashed a barrage of attacks at Leonidas with the cursed sword, but not one hit. Leonidas said Rudd relied too much on skills, causing even his footwork to become sluggish. Rudd was shocked. He hadn't expected the paralysis skill to have no effect, but Leonidas shook his head in denial. The paralysis was effective. It's just that high-rank adventurers had far greater tolerance than ordinary people. With that, he knocked Rudd back with a sword strike. Rudd quickly activated hardened defense, but was still knocked down by Leonidas' frontal punch. He solemnly warned Rudd that among monsters, there were many that had resistance to specific status ailments. He couldn't be overconfident in his own skills. Rudd executed an instant step assault, which Leonidas easily blocked. He ground his teeth in frustration, not expecting such a crushing defeat. Leonidas noticed something unusual. He raised an eyebrow, praising Rudd for infusing monster elements into the blade. Rudd used the jump skill he'd just learned. Leonidas was somewhat surprised he'd learned it so quickly. Truly an agile fellow. Rudd roared and channeled all his strength into a downward slash. The collision of monster elements triggered a massive explosion, but in the end, Rudd still lost. Leonidas said using such large movements couldn't possibly hit the target. Perhaps those monster skills were strong, but Rudd's close combat level was very poor. That last big sweeping strike might work against giant monsters, but in combat against people, it couldn't hit anyone. Rudd had to admit his shortcomings. Leonidas mentioned the method of magic circulation. Circulating magic power within the body could greatly enhance physical abilities. Rudd suddenly had an epiphany. He desperately tried to recall the feeling of attempting to circulate magic power back then. Soon he felt the monster elements circulating through his body. Leonidas couldn't help but praise how quickly he learned. He had real talent. Rudd excitedly begged Leonidas to spar with him once more. Leonidas gladly agreed. This was what he had hoped for too. The two exchanged blows freely, trading several rounds in evenly matched combat. Finally, Leonidas came out supporting the exhausted Rudd. Rudd panted heavily in defeat, sincerely admiring the power of an S-rank adventurer. Leonidas also frankly acknowledged Rudd's skills and applications. Rudd suddenly bowed in thanks. He knew Leonidas had deliberately been guiding him during the battle. Just then, Awu suddenly reminded him seriously to absolutely hide the fact that he ate monsters, because if the people of the royal capital learned of this, Rudd would certainly be sentenced to death. Rudd was frightened, unable to believe it would be so serious. It turned out that the closer to the royal capital, the more rampant the church's power became. The scriptures were their absolute faith, and consuming monsters was the most serious taboo. Although Rudd could negate the negative effects of monsters, the act of violating scripture was its spirit a sin. Moreover, the church's holy officials didn't distinguish the essence of matters. They only recognized the scripture's dogma. Awu inquired whether anyone besides his adventuring companions knew this secret. Aside from Alicia, Rudd had kept completely silent about this to everyone else. Suddenly, Rudd and Alicia thought of something. They broke out in cold sweat. Dome knew. At that moment, Dome had just finished forging the custom sword for Rudd. The two rushed non-stop to find Dome. After hearing their request, Dome stated he didn't care about taboos. He had no interest in what Rudd ate, so they needn't worry about him revealing the secret. More than these matters, he cared about the sword he had painstakingly forged for Rudd. Dome didn't understand why they suddenly said they didn't want it. Seeing this, Rudd immediately apologized. Dome had expended countless energy to forge this sword, overcoming difficulties to finally complete it. Rudd looked at the old man's grim face. He was indeed angry, but Dome suddenly made a request. Rudd, feeling guilty, quickly said he could agree to anything. But when Dome said he wanted to touch that cursed sword, Rudd hesitated but still refused. Because this sword was a cursed sword, it would drive anyone who touched it mad, but Dome wouldn't relent. This was his only request after canceling the commission, and he knew Rudd could heal people with status ailments. Rudd was extremely anxious. This was too dangerous, but Dome said if he got possessed, Rudd should just cut him down along with it. Rudd was shocked by this absurd statement, but seeing the old man's determined eyes, he couldn't bear to refuse. Alicia was still trying to persuade him, but Dome's eyes were already burning with fervor. As a blacksmith of many years, he'd never seen a sword that could absorb monster elements and magic power. He was determined to risk his life to witness it. Rudd finally relented and handed the cursed sword to Dome. The instant he touched the blade, Dome exclaimed in amazement. The sword's material was definitely not ordinary steel. The texture was extraordinary. The darkness dwelling within the blade seemed alive. The interweaving of madness and beauty captivated him. Just as he was absorbed in it, an evil power suddenly invaded. Dome was instantly controlled. He was completely controlled, his mind filled with mad shrieks of kill him, a memory he'd never experienced even surfaced. Skill. Substitution. Rudd reacted extremely quickly, activating the skill and calling Dome's consciousness back. After the crisis was resolved, Dome felt lingering fear and quickly apologized for his willfulness. He was shaken by that terrifying illusion. His determination to keep the secret became even firmer. He vowed he would never leak it. He swore he would definitely forge a divine weapon that surpassed the cursed sword. After leaving, Alicia sat contentedly in the carriage. After years of being hunted, she could finally travel peacefully by carriage. She originally wanted to hire an ordinary coachman, but considering Rudd's appetite, she ultimately asked Hilfeld and Nomia. They were heading to Ischia. The azure sea town of Ischia was a treasure trove of prosperous fishing trade. Their journey had two core purposes. The first purpose was to have Rudd learn new skills in the undersea temple labyrinth. The monsters there weren't found around Verona, allowing him to unlock various powerful skills. The second purpose was to revive the water spirit Oldir. Spirits had no physical form, so they couldn't truly be eliminated. They just needed to recover magic power. The undersea labyrinth was Oldir's birthplace, making it the perfect place to revive it, and Alicia also wanted to become stronger. Besides that, Ischia's delicious seafood was also incredibly tasty. Alicia suddenly remembered something and asked about what Awu had given Rudd when they left Verona. Rudd took out the item. It was a notebook, the precious materials left behind by the count who researched monster cuisine. When Awu learned he could eat monsters, he felt it would help Rudd, so he gave him the notebook. And Leonidas's encouragement also greatly inspired Rudd. Everyone chatted and laughed together. Rudd's gaze toward them grew increasingly reluctant. Alicia suddenly teased whether Rudd wanted to adventure together with Leonidas and the others. Rudd instantly panicked and hurriedly denied it. Alicia looked at his flustered appearance and couldn't help teasing him, making him beg for mercy repeatedly. At the same time, a piercing scream came from deep in the forest. A man used his last bit of strength to tell his wife to run quickly, but his wife was already too frightened to move, paralyzed on the ground. Pig Demon, level 28, skills, pain resistance, vigorous energy, and club technique. Count D-Tab's notebook actually researched forbidden methods of cooking monsters. Although slimes were low-level monsters, they had strong acid inside that could dissolve internal organs. Eating them directly meant certain death. They had to be soaked in seaweed ash alkaline solution for 2 days to neutralize the acidity. Roasting them would cause oil explosions and shrinkage. Steaming was the correct method. Cut into small pieces and mixed with salad, the light, slightly sweet taste was a perfect match. Alicia looked at Rudd's fascinated expression as he read the notebook. She sighed inwardly that Owu's notebook was truly a gift from the heart. She hadn't expected that in a world where eating monsters was considered taboo, such a notebook would exist. Alicia's eyes suddenly lit up as she suggested going to Ischia to thank the Count who wrote this notebook. Rudd stated bluntly this idea wouldn't work. Alicia took the book and flipped through it. Her expression grew increasingly grim. She looked dejected. It seemed that in this world, aside from Rudd, no one else could eat monsters. Passing through the forest ahead, Ischia would be just beyond. Alicia suddenly asked whether Rudd had heard the legend of the Calamity Dragon. Rudd recalled the terrifying fairy tales he'd heard in childhood. To ordinary people, the Calamity Dragon was as terrifying as a natural disaster. Misbehaving children were often threatened by adults that bad kids would be taken away by the Calamity Dragon. Alicia informed him that the forest they were passing through was the Calamity Dragon's habitat. Rudd was somewhat surprised. So the legendary Calamity Dragon truly existed. Alicia slowly nodded, and she had once seen the Calamity Dragon from afar. The Calamity Dragon's appearance was incredibly majestic and sacred, an existence humans simply couldn't contend with. Rudd couldn't help calculating. Since Alicia had really seen the Calamity Dragon, her age must be quite substantial. Seeing through what he was thinking, Alicia instantly exploded. Calculating a girl's age like this was too rude. Suddenly the wind spirit appeared, informing Alicia of the situation ahead. 3 pig demons were napping up ahead. Since they couldn't detour around, Alicia decided to subjugate these pig demons first before continuing forward. After finding those 3 pig demons, Rudd quietly circled around behind them, and with extreme speed, pierced through one pig demon's head. Soon the pig's head burst into flames, and its companions immediately panicked. Rudd continued to lock onto the remaining 2, killing both with one swift strike. The 2 pig demons' heads rolled to the ground. Alicia immediately cheered loudly, praising Rudd for his excellent work. Suddenly seeing corpses all over the ground, Alicia's face showed reluctance. This was too cruel. She speculated that some abnormal situation must have occurred here, perhaps due to the Calamity Dragon's disappearance, which led to the pig demons breeding in large numbers. If left unchecked now, they would definitely pose a danger to ordinary people. The 2 immediately decided to deal with these pig demons. Skill, heat detection. Rudd detected 40 to 50 pig demons gathered. Although pig demons were low level, they possessed intelligence. So team action meant they couldn't be underestimated. If he could select a perfect attack point, he could reduce their combat power in one fell swoop. Skill, paralysis sigh. Rudd unleashed a large range attack. Soon the paralysis attack began to take effect. Rudd jumped for joy. He really caught them all in one net. Suddenly they discovered that several pig demons were still standing, unaffected. Rudd's jaw dropped. Why did the paralysis skill fail? Suddenly he remembered what Leonidas said. Some monsters had resistance to status abnormality skills. Alicia suddenly noticed the pig demons were frantically devouring some kind of wild grass. Upon closer inspection, she discovered it was actually paralysis removal grass, which could quickly help the pig demons recover and increase their resistance. Soon all the pig demons' paralysis states fully recovered. It seemed the paralysis toxin tactic had completely failed. The detoxified pig demons carried giant axes and pressed forward step by step. Not only was Rudd unafraid, his eyes flashed with excitement. He would turn all these pig demons into fried pork cutlets. Several pig demons roared and bared their fangs and claws, charging madly toward Rudd and Alicia like maniacs. Alicia immediately rushed forward, preparing to use powerful magic to catch this group of pig demons in one net. After just 2 steps, Rudd stopped her. He wanted to conduct an experiment and asked her to step back for now and leave it to him. Skill, poison scale powder. However, he overlooked that this poison also affected Alicia, so she hurriedly covered her nose and mouth. Rudd leaped into the air, raised his hand and swung his sword, instantly severely wounding several pig demons who fell to the ground. He excitedly told them to all come at him together. At this time, every time Rudd launched an attack, the poison scale powder would sweep through all the surrounding monsters. In just a moment, the pig demons contaminated by the scale powder all succumbed one after another. The corner of Rudd's mouth curved into a smile. The scale powder was beginning to take effect. At this moment, one pig demon took advantage of Rudd's unpreparedness to quietly approach, raising its axe high to chop at him. Fortunately, Rudd reacted extremely quickly and bounced away to avoid the fatal blow. That pig demon roared, clearly thoroughly enraged. Soon several giant pig demons several times taller than humans surrounded him, with Rudd trapped in the middle. Rudd's heart turned cold. This guy was a leader with command skills, he must deal with it first. Suddenly Alicia shouted loudly to warn him to watch out above. A huge boulder came rolling down with a roar, heading straight toward Rudd. Rudd exerted force with his feet and narrowly avoided the giant rock. How could such a large stone appear here? Rudd felt it was strange. Turning his head, he saw a strange fellow. It turned out to be the Pig Demon King. The Pig Demon King was originally a deep labyrinth monster, and basically couldn't possibly appear on the surface. Could it be because the Calamity Dragon settled here, causing the surrounding monster element's concentration to skyrocket? But no matter what, leaving the Pig Demon King unchecked would only expand the disaster. Several giant pig demons pressed forward step by step, about to completely surround the two. Rudd immediately swung his sword to meet the enemy. The pressing matter was to kill these pig demons cleanly. He must now close in on the Pig Demon King in one breath and eliminate this leader first. He had no extra time to waste with these monsters. Rudd and Alicia cooperated with perfect coordination, clearing all the surrounding giant pig demons in just a few moves. The Pig Demon King was furious and violently lifted a giant rock, smashing it hard toward the two of them. Skill, Flash Step. Rudd used Flash Step to dodge the boulder and charged straight toward the Pig Demon King. The Pig Demon King reacted extremely quickly. It immediately pulled out a giant club and violently struck Rudd away with one blow. Seeing more and more pig demons around him, Rudd understood. It must be that when the boss was in danger, all the underlings rushed over to support. His eyes hardened, preparing to deal with them all at once. Skill, Miasma Wave. The pig demons affected by the miasma let out shrill and painful screams. In just a moment, the pig demons collapsed with bared teeth, leaving only the Pig Demon King still standing. Rudd clearly knew the outcome was decided, and the Pig Demon King was merely struggling to hold on. It was hit by the miasma and was now in an abnormal state. Rudd provocatively gestured for it to come right ahead. He mobilized all the monster elements in his body, letting dense monster elements wrap around his entire body, and his power instantly surged several times. The Pig Demon King charged at Rudd with red eyes, determined to tear him apart. The giant club in its hand fell heavily, about to smash Rudd's head. Unexpectedly, he blocked it with one hand, steadily receiving this blow. With just one raised sword strike, he split the formidable Pig Demon King in half. Rudd's heart was full of gratitude for Leonidas's help, which enabled him to become stronger. He breathed a long sigh of relief, and his tense nerves finally relaxed slightly. Alicia looked at him with worship-filled eyes, praising how amazing Rudd was to kill the Pig Demon King with one strike. She curiously asked what skill he had just used. That was Miasma Wave, obtained from the Miasma Dragon. Although very powerful, it had one drawback. As soon as he finished speaking, Rudd's stomach growled. The drawback was that after using this skill, he became incredibly hungry. In a blink, Rudd had made fragrant fried pork cutlets. Alicia looked helpless. Rudd said with a smile that he processed the materials and seasonings according to the notes. The aroma of the fried pork cutlets spread out, attracting an unexpected guest. Rudd sensed the presence and turned to look. The twin-tailed girl spoke up, wanting to taste this dish. Rudd was full of doubt, asking how she could appear here. The young girl said with a smile that she really liked him, so she pursued him all the way without hesitation. But actually what she couldn't forget was the monster that Rudd cooked in the Aberio New Labyrinth at that time. From that moment on, she wanted to taste that monster dish. As she spoke, she reached out and grabbed a piece of pork cutlet. Seeing this, Rudd shouted out anxiously, wanting to stop her, but she ignored him and directly ate that piece of monster pork cutlet. Rudd couldn't believe she really dared to eat monster meat. He had to quickly find a way to make her vomit it out. He hurriedly grabbed her and told Alicia to quickly use her finger to induce vomiting. The twin-tailed girl said she would be fine. The two didn't believe her at all. This was monster meat that would kill you if swallowed. Watching the two of them fuss about, she was somewhat speechless. Her temper flared up, and she raised her hand to forcefully bounce Rudd and Alicia away. She said, "How dare you casually touch my body?" Rudd grimaced in pain. What was that power just now? The twin-tailed girl felt regretful. Such a rare delicacy, and she didn't taste it just now. Try again. She grabbed the pork cutlet again and swallowed it without hesitation. Rudd and Alicia screamed as they watched. Was she going to turn into a monster? Rudd wanted to prepare to use his substitute skill in advance, but her eyes lit up and she shouted with satisfaction, "This pork cutlet is so delicious!" Rudd and Alicia looked astonished, unable to believe she was actually safe and sound. He could clearly sense the dense monster element from the ingredients, yet the girl before him was spirited, without the slightest abnormality. Seeing her eat so deliciously, Alicia was tempted too. The twin-tailed girl kindly reminded Alicia to dismiss any thought of trying it. Eating monsters was extremely harmful to humans. Alicia didn't understand why she had no problems eating monster meat. The twin-tailed girl nodded and said, "That's talking about humans. Human taboos don't apply to me at all." Alicia and Rudd were confused. How could she possibly be a monster? The twin-tailed girl frankly admitted, clearly informing the two that she was not human. Steadily, Rudd activated his skill, Appraisal. The appraisal result showed Elmira's race was human. Rudd was increasingly puzzled, not understanding why she said she was a monster. Elmira immediately reacted, hurriedly releasing her disguise and telling him to look again. After appraising, Rudd's face showed shock. He hurriedly reminded Alicia to quickly get away from Elmira. Alicia shuddered in fright, not knowing what happened. Rudd's tone was still incredulous. Elmira was actually the Calamity Dragon. Alicia was completely dumbfounded. She never expected it would be like this. Elmira didn't care at all, instead praising Rudd's pork cutlet as delicious. Rudd suppressed his inner fear and pressed Elmira about her true purpose. Elmira soothed them not to be nervous. She didn't eat everything. Alicia asked why she, as a high-level monster, would transform into a human and move about outside. Elmira said she just discovered monster element's aura on Rudd, so she tried approaching to see. The result was that she didn't expect Rudd to actually be a monster devourer. She was captivated by the monster cuisine Rudd made, and unable to contain her curiosity, she followed him. Learning the reason, they finally let down their guard. Elmira informed Rudd that there was a pig demon nest stronghold hidden nearby. During the time she left the forest, they bred recklessly, which disgusted her. Midway through speaking, she was attracted by the food again. What she ate just now was the Pig Demon King's meat. The higher the monster level, the denser the monster elements, and the better the taste. After eating, Elmira made up her mind to go to the Pig Demon Nest to hunt the Labyrinth Master. She told the two to wait here in place. Alicia hurriedly called out to stop her. They wanted to go along. She wanted to witness her combat style, and said they urgently wanted to become stronger. Hearing this, Elmira found this request exceptionally interesting. She tacitly agreed. After walking for a while, Elmira informed the two that the Pig Demon Nest was almost here. Her tone carried a few points of pride. She would let them witness her prowess, so they would know why she was called the Calamity Dragon. This was an unfamiliar labyrinth, probably a brand new labyrinth that hadn't been reported to the guild yet. Elmira said with a smile, The culprit that made my territory full of pig stench is inside here. But I don't really want to use monster elements right now. She pushed open the door with a surprised expression. Her gaze swept over the densely packed swarm of pig demons. Elmira's eyes burst with brilliant light. This was simply a treasure trove of ingredients. Rudd and Alicia sighed that the numbers were too many. They immediately wanted to go forward to help, but Elmira didn't give him any room to interfere at all. She just made an agreement with Rudd that afterward, he would compensate her consumed monster elements with delicious cuisine. Monster elements surged wildly around Elmira's body, and dazzling light burst forth. Rudd watched with suddenly contracted pupils. This magnificent monster element's power was far more terrifying than he imagined. The corner of Elmira's lips curved into a smile. Because she ate delicious food, today she would make an exception and give them something special. Skill, Black Dragon Cannon. Violent power exploded with a roar. The nearby pig demons had no time to react at all. Monster elements transformed into sharp blades, frantically tearing at the surrounding pig demons. In just an instant, they were all swallowed by flames. The monster elements was still continuously spreading. The pig demons farther away fled desperately, but still couldn't escape the monster element's erosion. Even the pig demons hiding in the deepest part of the cave couldn't escape disaster. The entire level was completely cleared. Rudd watched dumbstruck. Elmira's strength was simply too formidable. Elmira exhaled lightly. She hadn't used this ultimate move in a very long time. Elmira turned and called to Rudd, telling him to make these pig demons into pig demon king fried pork cutlets. Rudd's face showed difficulty. With her strike just now, all the ingredients were burned to ashes. Hearing this, Elmira was greatly shocked, regretting that she hadn't used this move in so long that she didn't control the force well. She sniffed the air lightly and her eyes lit up. The labyrinth master on the next level was still alive, something to celebrate. She urged Rudd to hurry and move, impatient to get new ingredients. The three quickly arrived at the end of the next level. The tightly closed stone door in front was the entrance to the labyrinth master's room. Elmira rubbed her fists together, impatient to make a move. She directly kicked the door open with one foot. Seeing the labyrinth master's appearance clearly, Elmira's eyes gleamed. So round and plump, it was good ingredient material. Pig Demon Emperor, level 68. Elmira made up her mind. To protect this excellent ingredient, this time she would defeat it with bare hands. She glanced at Rudd and shook her head secretly, saying his monster element's control skill really weren't up to par. She told Rudd to watch carefully. This was what monster elements to wrapped combat looked like. The Pig Demon Emperor was disturbed and extremely angry, charging at Elmira with bared fangs and claws. Alicia hurriedly warned Elmira of danger. Unexpectedly, Elmira delivered a left hook, and the powerful force sent the Pig Demon Emperor flying hard. This strength was simply too formidable. Elmira's figure flashed and followed closely behind, neatly swinging out a back kick with swift and fierce offensive moves. This final blow fell hard directly toward the vital point. The Pig Demon Emperor's teeth were about to shatter from pain, its whole body convulsing non-stop. The powerful impact force pinned it hard against the wall, completely losing the strength to resist. This was totally a one-hit kill. Elmira's strength was too astonishing. Elmira turned to look at Rudd. She said, "Hurry up and prepare. Time to eat." Soon a serving of sauce-fried pork cutlet and fried pork cutlet was ready, and the aroma instantly filled the air. Elmira couldn't wait to taste it. The more she ate, the more satisfied she became. This was exactly the taste she had been looking forward to. Monster elements was continuously flowing back into her body. Compared to eating monsters raw, making them into cuisine to absorb monster elements was much more efficient. Rudd listened with a face full of curiosity. Elmira teased, "With your half-baked level, you simply can't comprehend the essence at all. Your training is far from enough. You're still way off." Suddenly, she changed the subject and asked Rudd, "Do you want me to join your team?" Alicia didn't expect her to suddenly make such a proposal at all, questioning what she meant. Elmira stated the exchange conditions. As long as Rudd regularly made cuisine, she would teach him to control monster elements. Although Rudd was happy in his heart, this proposal was too sudden, and he was somewhat in a difficult position. Elmira didn't hide anything, and pointed out that Rudd's magic backpack had the aroma of a sage dragon. She knew Rudd was afraid of side effects, so he hadn't dared to touch this precious ingredient. But such top-quality precious ingredients left uneaten would be too much of a waste. Rudd was exposed on the spot and sighed helplessly. You can actually discover that he no longer hid it and immediately took out the precious sage dragon meat. Elmira asked him if he still remembered the abnormality in his body during the last battle. Rudd nodded. At that time, his monster elements was depleted. In desperation, he ate the sage dragon's egg. Magnificent monster elements surged into his body. Powerful force churned through his limbs and bones, and at that time, he completely lost control. Elmira pointed out that was because Rudd's physical body simply couldn't adapt to that massive monster elements. He had the status abnormality nullification skill protecting him, so normally he wouldn't lose control, but that one time, Elmira proposed whether he wanted to make this meat into cuisine and try eating it. Even if he went berserk, she could help control it. But whether he could absorb true dragon power all depended on Rudd's own ability. Rudd was convinced, and his eyes became firm. He decided to boldly give it a try. After some busy work, the fragrant sage dragon meat cutlet was freshly prepared. Alicia looked at the tempting meat cutlet with shining eyes. This looked way too delicious. Rudd still had concerns. Was it really safe for him to eat this meat cutlet? He didn't want to be like last time again. Elmira told him to relax. Monster elements and the magic power in human bodies were essentially the same. Both were special energy residing in monster flesh and blood that could nourish oneself. When humans ingested monster elements, either their physical bodies couldn't withstand it and they mutated, or they couldn't withstand it and died. But Rudd's skill could prevent mutation. This point was uniquely advantageous. Strictly speaking, it modified the body according to needs. Elmira asked back, "Wasn't there a similar symptom the first time you devoured a monster?" Rudd nodded in admission. That time he did completely lose his reason. So this was the root of Rudd's difficulty adapting to monster elements. If he relied on eating monsters to level up his adaptation, who knew how much time it would take? But there was another way, to adapt quickly. Since physical conditions couldn't keep up, then rely on top-notch techniques. Rudd's heart stirred. Techniques? Could it be similar in principle to the magic circulation he just learned? Elmira's eyes carried a smile. Since he mastered the basics, he would pick it up quickly. Controlling excess monster elements outside the body would prevent loss of control. She said, "Give me your hand." Rudd obediently complied. Their palms clasped together, and monster elements slowly transferred to his hand. She patiently guided. First slowly release the monster elements in your body, then guide the released monster elements to gradually wrap around your body's surface. Rudd's heart shook tremendously, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "So amazing." This feeling was completely different from before, but his body gradually couldn't withstand the load. He was covered in sweat, unable to support it, and finally couldn't help but release his palm. Elmira instructed him to remember the feeling. This meal was also an excellent practice opportunity. Alicia looked admiringly. Humans simply didn't know this technique at all. Elmira urged them to stop wasting words. The food would get cold if they didn't eat it. She came for this grand meal in the first place. Rudd took a deep breath to suppress his nervousness. He was about to eat now. The two simultaneously bit into the meat cutlet. Elmira subconsciously exclaimed, "This was simply too delicious. Truly worthy of a true dragon, so high quality from birth." Being able to eat such pure monster elements was simply too blissful. Calming down, she was curious whether Rudd could withstand this monster elements. Rudd sensed the changes in his body with shock in his heart, clearly perceiving power surging up. Elmira hurriedly asked, "How does your body feel? Are there any signs of going berserk?" Rudd could still barely maintain his composure for now, and was smoothly absorbing monster elements and learning skills. He successively learned telekinesis, heaven-breaking rush, paralysis resistance, underground technique, eye of wisdom. Rudd suddenly groaned. Alicia hurriedly stepped forward with concern and inquired. Countless unfamiliar images flooded uncontrollably into his mind. He was puzzled in his heart. Could these sudden visions be hallucinations? He quickly denied this conjecture. If they were hallucinations, the status abnormality nullification skill should have reacted. But since they weren't hallucinations, what exactly were these visions? A dignified angry shout suddenly rang out in his mind. "How dare a mere human covet my power? If you dare to use the Eye of Wisdom again, I will not be lenient with you." In the end, Rudd ultimately failed to learn the Eye of Wisdom. Alicia hurriedly stepped forward to check, asking with a face full of worry if Rudd was okay. Rudd came to his senses and shook his head, softly informing her that there was a skill he failed to learn. Elmira snorted coldly. She didn't expect that even Rudd couldn't seize this skill. The Eye of Wisdom was the Sage Dragon's inherent skill, capable of seeing through past and future. She firmly believed that in this world only Rudd was most compatible with this skill, but if a true dragon intervened to obstruct, it still couldn't be overcome. However, skill learning failure was also not a type of status abnormality. But if they let her join, she could guide Rudd in controlling monster elements. Elmira said, "So, will you let me join your team?" Alicia agreed with what Elmira just said, but they still hesitated. The images Rudd saw just now were too bizarre. He couldn't help thinking, were those memories of the past or some other existence? For instance, even if the physical body perished, knowledge would be sealed in the soul. This was the legendary Sage Dragon. It could even see through the future that hadn't happened yet. After thinking it through, Rudd made up his mind. He agreed to team up with Elmira. Rudd clearly knew that to become stronger, he couldn't do without Elmira's assistance, and it was beneficial to Alicia too. Alicia thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. To achieve their common goal right now, this might be the optimal solution. The group thus finalized the team formation, but Alicia still remained on full alert, warning Elmira not to do anything strange. At this time, someone pointed into the distance and exclaimed. Everyone looked up. Ischia was right before their eyes. This place was more prosperous than they imagined. It seemed the coastal geographical location made trade flourish here, revealing vibrant vitality everywhere. Rudd was preoccupied with the undersea temple labyrinth, wanting to hurry to the guild to apply for a subjugation mission. Alicia said foreign adventurers had rules to follow. They had to first take simple commissions and earn enough guild recognition before they could go to labyrinths. Moreover, with their current strength, conquering the undersea temple would probably be very difficult. The group entered the Ischia Adventurers Guild. Alicia carefully browsed through the commission list, looking for a subjugation commission suitable for introductions. She flipped to a shark commission and her eyes lit up. This difficulty level was very suitable. Suddenly, two mocking voices rang out. "You look like a poor low-level small team." Rudd and the others were stunned, clearly not expecting someone to come cause trouble. The scarred man stared at the small-sized Elmira and laughed wildly. "This isn't playing house. You'd better hurry home and stop embarrassing yourselves here." Alan stepped forward quickly, angrily telling them to stop. He politely apologized to Rudd and the others, saying his team members' attitudes were too rude. Scarface was unconvinced, questioning what right Alan had to order them. Alan's eyes were sharp, warning the two that if they dared to disgrace the White Wave Blade's name, he wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson. Scarface immediately got worked up, pulled out a knife and said, "If you have the guts, come and spar." Baldy hurriedly pulled him back, reminding him not to be impulsive. If they caused trouble in the guild, the boss definitely wouldn't let them off easily. Scarface spat unwillingly and said, "How boring. You're only fit to be monster feed." Then he called to Baldy to hurry and leave. Elmira said angrily, "Can we roast those guys and eat them?" Rudd hurriedly soothed her not to be impulsive. Alan came forward again to apologize. Many people in his team had such rough personalities. Rudd waved his hand saying it was fine. This was how the adventurer profession was. You encountered these kinds of people everywhere you went. Alan saw that they looked like it was their first time coming to the town of Ischia. He proactively introduced himself as Alan of the White Wave Blade. Rudd and Alicia also hurriedly introduced themselves. Alan glanced at the commission in their hands. It was actually a mission to subjugate blue land sharks. Although this commission's difficulty wasn't high, they had to go out to sea, so they definitely needed a ship. Alicia nodded. They were preparing to go to the harbor her to rent a vessel. Alan proposed to simply lend them his ship as an apology for his subordinates. He could also help guide them out to sea. If unfamiliar with sea subjugation, they would encounter many troubles. Elmira flatly refused. Seeing this, Alan hurriedly apologized, saying, "I didn't think it through. My apologies. Finding reliable and trustworthy companions to team up with for subjugating monsters was indeed very important." He said goodbye with a smile, and said he would prepare a ship for them at the harbor. He hoped they could return safely with everything going smoothly at sea. The group successfully boarded the ship. Alicia couldn't help sighing that being able to borrow a ship was really lucky. She felt that the young man named Alan really seemed like a good person. Elmira surveyed the vessel and snorted coldly. After the ship sailed for a long time, they should be arriving at the blue land shark hunting ground soon. Alicia suddenly called to Rudd, telling him to wait for her a moment. She summoned Old Ire and raised her hand to cast Water Spirit's blessing. Alicia's face darkened. As expected, it still didn't work. Rudd's status abnormality nullification skill directly completely nullified the Water Spirit's blessing. Deep sea monsters generally use magic to maintain breathing in water. Rudd comforted her that it wasn't without solutions. Fortunately, he still had the high-speed swimming skill. Rudd instructed the two of them to wait on the ship at ease. He would be back soon. Elmira watched his confident appearance and laughed, saying, "What an interesting fellow." Rudd dived into the sea to search. He quickly locked onto the target, his eyes lighting up. "Finally found it! Blue land shark LV-26. Skills, water bullet, ocean tide, amphibious, water pressure resistance." Rudd began pondering what shark cuisine to make. Sashimi or deep-fried, tender, pan-fried fish steak would also be good. The blue land shark turned and saw Rudd. It immediately swam fiercely toward him. Rudd wasn't flustered at all, instead grinning to reveal a confident smile. Elmira was somewhat worried. Alicia said if there was danger he would signal, and then they would pull him up with the rope. Moreover, she firmly believed Rudd could easily handle this level of opponent. Suddenly, their attention was drawn to unusual movement on the sea surface. What was that thing? Only when that figure approached did they discover it was actually a rare water horse. The water horse's water walking skill would definitely be very useful to Rudd. Alicia had just wanted to act when the water horse already sensed their presence. The seawater under its feet instantly condensed into water droplets, rapidly gathering into highly lethal water bullets. Seeing this, Elmira urgently called out to the wind spirit Hilfeld. Hilfeld timely activated Windblade, blocking all the water bullets shot by the water horse. Seeing this, Alicia was both surprised and delighted. This was water magic principle. They must capture it. Elmira licked her lips. Today, she could just taste horse cuisine. She would suck the water horse's bone marrow dry today. The water horse sensed Elmira's terrifying power and turned to flee without hesitation. Alicia was anxious and angry, saying, "Why did you scare it away?" Elmira didn't expect this water horse to be so clever either, but she wouldn't let it succeed. Alicia hadn't reacted yet when Elmira urged her to chase after it. On the other side, Rudd was still contending with the blue land shark on the seabed, but the blue land shark's wave attacks were swift and fierce, somewhat tricky to deal with. Suddenly, the rope tied on Rudd was violently pulled. Rudd cried out, and before he could figure out the situation, he was pulled out of the water. He asked with a confused face what happened. Alicia was somewhat apologetic. They suddenly pulled him up because they discovered a rare monster. Rudd said he was just a bit away from dealing with the blue land shark. Alicia told him to first look ahead. Looking in the direction Alicia pointed, he was surprised to see the water horse running on the water surface. The water horse sensed the pursuit from behind, and again activated water magic principle to attack them. Rudd sensed the fluctuation of water magic, and hurriedly called out the cursed sword. The cursed sword immediately absorbed the water magic. Rudd indeed wanted this kind of water magic skill. Elmira urged Alicia to speed up. Urgent roaring sounds came from behind. It was the blue land shark from before catching up. Seeing the water horse escape to the small island, they immediately decided to continue pursuing. Rudd smugly turned to the blue land shark and said sorry. He'd have to wait until after dealing with the water horse to play with him properly. As soon as he finished speaking, he sensed something was wrong. Turning to look, he was instantly stunned. The blue land shark was still agile on land. Rudd made a snap decision. He would deal with the blue land sharks and leave the task of catching the water horse to Alicia and Elmira. Elmira was extremely displeased, saying, "Rudd actually dares to order me around like this." Rudd looked at the blue land sharks surrounding him, and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. He found these guys' skills very interesting. He immediately circulated the monster elements in his body, tightly wrapping the released monster elements around himself. One blue land shark jumped up first, opening its bloody maw to bite Rudd. Rudd quickly counterattacked with a punch, but didn't expect it to bite his arm tightly. Skill, hard body. The pain sensation immediately subsided. Seeing the blue land shark refuse to let go, he exerted force violently and threw it hard to the ground with an over-the-shoulder throw. Rudd was secretly pleased in his heart, sensing that his use of monster elements was becoming increasingly skilled, and the skill power had also clearly increased. Another blue land shark saw its companion's miserable state and turned to flee in fright. The corner of Rudd's mouth curved into a cold smile. How could he let prey that reached his mouth escape? Skill, air slash. The air slash's power was astonishing, instantly splitting the fleeing blue land shark in two. Rudd looked at the fallen blue land shark and nodded with satisfaction. Alicia chased after the water horse for a while, only to find that her target had disappeared. This water horse's escape speed was truly astonishingly fast. Elmira thought to herself that it was impossible for the water horse to escape. Just then, rustling sounds came from the surrounding grass. Alicia immediately determined the direction of the sounds and laughed excitedly. "Found you!" Right after that, the rustling sounds in the grass grew denser and denser, making people's hearts uneasy. The next second, countless water horse surged out. Elmira frowned tightly. This was really troublesome now. The two were surrounded by a herd of water horse, and what was originally a simple capture mission became somewhat tricky. Water surged wildly around the water horses' bodies, instantly condensing into countless dense water bullets. The two immediately tensed up. The attack was coming. Alicia immediately summoned Nomia. Rocks suddenly rose from beneath their feet, and all the water bullet attacks hit the rock wall. Elmira was somewhat surprised. She didn't expect Alicia to be quite capable. "Let's take them all down next," she said. Skill: rock spear strike. Countless stones shot out like bullets, accurately smashing into the water horse. The water horse that were hit instantly turned into puddles of clear water. Only then did Alicia realize that the entire herd of water horse from before were all deceptive illusions. Elmira said angrily, "How dare they scheme against me? They really don't know their place." She lifted her head and sniffed, finally locking onto the water horse's location. Skill: partial transformation. She jumped down from the rock wall, her two dragon claws landing steadily on the ground. Then her hind legs kicked off, and her body shot out like a missile, charging fiercely toward the water horse. The water horse fled desperately in a frantic escape. But unexpectedly, Elmira's speed was even superior, and she caught up in just a few seconds. Seeing the water horse prepare to attack again, Elmira sneered coldly, mocking that its speed was too slow. She charged up and threw a fierce right hook. The water horse fell to the ground on the spot, completely lifeless. At this moment, Rudd also carried over the blue land shark's corpse to meet up with them. Elmira said happily, "Looks like it's mealtime." In no time, the table was filled with pan-seared blue land shark tender fish steaks and stewed water horse meat. Looking at this table full of delicacies, Elmira completely lost her ability to speak. She took a big bite and couldn't help but praise how fragrant the horse meat was. This was specially modified by Rudd. He worried that raw horse meat would taste too bad, so he changed it to a stewed preparation. Seeing them eat so deliciously, Alicia's stomach also began to get hungry, but she couldn't eat anything on the table. She had no choice but to divert her attention and asked Rudd if he had learned any new skills. Rudd said with a smile that he gained quite a few new skills: water walking, water magic theory, current, and amphibious. He couldn't help wanting to try these new skills right now. Skill: amphibious. After activating the skill, there was no movement at all, and Rudd thought the activation had failed. But Alicia looked at his face in shock and said, "Gills appeared on your face!" Hearing this, Rudd immediately took off his gloves. Sure enough, his hands had also turned into webbed fins. The novel experience made him laugh out loud. Unable to contain his excitement, he rushed toward the water's edge, eager to go in and try it out. Seeing this, Alicia grew worried, afraid that Rudd would turn into a monster. Elmira said, "Rudd is just different from ordinary people, that's all." In the ocean, Rudd couldn't help but exclaim that this skill was too amazing. He could actually breathe underwater, and he could move freely in the water too. Rudd was born and raised in an inland town. He never dared to imagine that one day he could swim so freely in the ocean like this, and have a group of companions. This was happiness, wasn't it? After everything ended, they returned to shore. Alan was extremely surprised. He didn't expect them to subjugate both the blue land shark and the water horse together. Rudd nodded with a smile, humbly stating that this was all thanks to Alan's help. Alicia also enthusiastically wanted to treat him to a meal, as thanks for borrowing the boat. Alan hurriedly waved his hands in refusal, but Alicia insisted on treating him to a meal, and asked him to recommend a shop with good alcohol. Seeing this, Alan stopped refusing and accepted the invitation with a smile. Walking into the shop Alan recommended, everyone couldn't help but praise what a nice place it was. Someone suddenly lowered their voice to remind their companion to look toward Rudd and his group. The scarred man looked in the direction the bald man pointed and said angrily, "Those guys actually still dare to be so smug." Alicia looked at the table full of delicacies with bright eyes. She said with wild joy, "This looks so delicious." Alan said with a smile that Iskia's fishing industry was prosperous and had always been proud of producing fresh, top-grade seafood. Alicia was busy feasting heartily and had no time to listen to his introduction. After so many days, she was finally eating good food. Elmira, however, felt that although the ingredients and cooking methods were good, she always felt something was missing. Alan teased that Elmira was a gourmet, but Alicia knew what Elmira meant by missing flavor and immediately reminded Elmira not to speak carelessly. Alan curiously asked why they had come to Ischia. Rudd said they came to challenge the undersea temple labyrinth subjugation mission. They needed to obtain materials from the labyrinth floor boss and also help Eildire recover its condition. Seeing the spirit, Alan's face showed shock. He couldn't believe that someone as young as Alicia could already command spirits. Little did he know that Alicia had lived 3 times longer than him. Suddenly, someone viciously kicked over the dining table, and the food instantly scattered all over the floor. The person immediately offered a fake apology, claiming with complete disdain that he had accidentally slipped. Seeing this, Alan was burning with anger and sternly shouted for him to stop harassing his friends. The scarred man completely ignored him, saying that someone who always hung around with other teams had no right to order him around. Alan trembled with rage and angrily rebuked them. "Have you forgotten White Wave Blade's ideal of protecting the weak?" The scar-faced man scoffed disdainfully. "That's the old ideal from the previous generation? Times have changed. If you can't fit in, leave already." Alan was completely enraged. White Wave Blade was that person's soul, and he would never allow them to defile it. The scarred man immediately drew his sword. He had long found Alan unpleasant, believing Alan looked down on him. Seeing this, Alicia immediately spoke up to stop them. Disputes among team members were common and didn't need to become so ugly. This was a tavern, not a place where they could fight and cause trouble. Seeing the sword in Alicia's hand, he was completely incredulous. He hadn't noticed at all when the sword was taken. Alicia held the sword and said calmly, "Teams have their rules, and taverns have their rules too." In the blink of an eye, the table was filled with various kinds of liquor. If there was a dispute in a tavern, of course it had to be settled by competing in drinking capacity. Elmira found this matter interesting, while only Rudd saw through that Alicia just wanted to drink. Alicia set the stakes. The losing side had to listen to one request from the winner, and must obey no matter what. The scarred man and the bald man calculated silently. Although this bet was baffling, it was a good opportunity to drive Alan away. Their eyes gleamed cunningly, both feeling this bet was extremely advantageous to them. They were confident they had the odds of winning. Alan felt something was off, but the scarred man agreed first, even advising Alan that taverns have their rules and must be followed. They would definitely make them regret this. The bald man boasted proudly that he was called the sake-swallowing demon pig in this town, with an astonishing drinking capacity. He had never gotten seasick or drunk. The two were aggressive, challenging Alicia not to bore them. Alicia gladly agreed. This suited her perfectly. With Rudd's begin, the competition officially started. In just a moment, the scarred man couldn't hold on first and passed out. Right after, the bald man couldn't hold on either and slept with his head down, dead to the world. Even Alan couldn't escape and collapsed to the side, unable to move. But Alicia was drinking enthusiastically, and Elmira was also still unsatisfied, urging the owner to bring new alcohol. The owner watched in alarm. This barley wine's concentration was 3 times that of ordinary wine, and these two chugging it like this was terrifying. Completely intoxicated, Alicia and Elmira gazed affectionately at each other and praised one another. Seeing this, Rudd advised the two that there was no need to keep drinking, but Elmira cursed him as someone who didn't understand alcohol. Seeing this, the owner had a thought. Perhaps these two were amazing enough to drink dragon flame barley wine with a concentration 100 times stronger. Elmira couldn't wait and directly snatched the alcohol from the owner's hands, and as if in revenge, stuffed it into Rudd's mouth and poured it down. Others watched in horror, exclaiming that drinking dragon flame barley wine like this would be fatal. Unexpectedly, the drunk state was directly nullified, and Rudd moved the bottle away, telling Elmira to mind her limits. Elmira looked disgusted and pouted. Drinking with Rudd was really too boring. She gulped down the dragon flame barley wine with a look of amazement on her face, shouting, "This alcohol tastes way too good." She enthusiastically handed the alcohol to Alicia, and in her excitement couldn't control herself and let her tail show. Rudd frantically blocked it for her, whispering for Elmira to quickly put her tail away. He reminded everyone that the competition was already over and it was time to go home now. Rudd supported Alan and left the tavern together with Alicia and Elmira. Skill, substitute. The 3 people opposite them instantly regained consciousness. Alan was somewhat surprised. There was actually a skill that could be used this way. Rudd said vaguely that there were special reasons and asked Alan not to pursue it further. Alicia quickly chimed in to persuade Alan not to overthink it, saying that drinking should be happy. She had lived this long and never lost a drinking competition. As long as they won, it would end perfectly and wouldn't ruin the good mood of dining. Alan looked full of guilt. He felt very sorry for causing them so much trouble. Rudd asked Alan what had happened, and if he didn't mind he could talk about it, they might be able to help. Alan's eyes dimmed. Everything had to start from 6 years ago. Back then, monsters suddenly appeared in the village. Because Alan wasn't in the village, he narrowly escaped disaster. But his family perished, and he became an orphan all alone. He was kindly taken in by the founder of White Wave Blade. From then on, the phrase "we exist to protect the weak" was carved into his heart. The founder extended a helping hand to the despairing them, and bestowed the power to fight monsters. The White Wave Blade of those days was his only spiritual support until that day, 6 years ago, in the undersea temple labyrinth. Glance had just slain an octopus monster when the leader immediately praised that his skills had improved again, but he only felt that the others still treated him like a child who hadn't grown up. Everyone looked toward the distance with tight hearts, exclaiming that something was wrong. When they saw clearly what it was, despair immediately rose in their hearts. It was an entire school of merfolk, swarming densely toward them. Everyone instantly panicked. It was the octopus monster's blood that had attracted them. The leader made a quick decision. He would stay behind to hold off the fishmen and buy time, urging the team members to flee quickly. Alan was anxious and panicked and absolutely unwilling to leave the leader behind, but the leader patted his chest and promised he would definitely make it back alive. Alan was still worried and stammered, wanting to object, but was sternly interrupted by the leader, who roared for everyone to shut up and leave quickly, his tone full of firmness. The other team members immediately grabbed Alan and swam outward. The leader roared for everyone not to look back and swim to the surface with all their might, but he himself faced countless fishmen. That leader who protected everyone ultimately couldn't keep his promise, and never came back. After that, White Wave Blade was handed over to the spirited young member Glance. The entire team's atmosphere completely changed. Breaking free from the original leader's control, the ruffian and hooligan nature of the team was exposed. Many senior veteran members couldn't stand this chaos and disappointedly chose to leave one after another. Organizations changed with those in power. They could only accept or leave, but Alan still wanted to protect White Wave Blade. He always felt that those people in the team weren't bad by nature, just that no one was guiding them. Alan suddenly snapped back to his senses, annoyed that he had said too much, but he sincerely advised Rudd's team not to challenge the underwater labyrinth. This place had already been monopolized by White Wave Blade. Hearing this, Alicia said in surprise, "Monopolizing a labyrinth doesn't follow the rules at all." Alan smiled bitterly. White Wave Blade acts proper in town, but in the labyrinth they'll definitely strike ruthlessly. Rudd understood his good intentions, so he thanked him for the warning. And in the distance, someone was secretly observing. After learning what had happened in the past 2 days, Glance angrily punched Glenn, furiously rebuking him for his incompetence, letting outsiders run wild on their own turf. Glenn quickly apologized and said that Rudd's team appeared to be planning to conquer the undersea temple labyrinth. Glance was furious. He absolutely wouldn't allow nameless outsiders to look down on White Wave Blade's reputation and must eliminate them. He decided to go along because he had obtained something powerful. He couldn't wait to make Rudd and his group pay the price. At the entrance to the undersea temple labyrinth, Rudd turned to ask Alicia if she had been here before. Alicia said she had, but it was a long time ago. and the inside of the labyrinth had definitely changed by now. Rudd calculated the time and realized that when Alicia came, this place should have already been occupied by White Wave Blade, but Alicia had no recollection of it. Hearing this, Glance rebuked Rudd's team for speaking too recklessly. They sternly warned that this was White Wave Blade's territory and absolutely not a place anyone could just barge into. Alicia said they had already applied and registered at the guild, so there was no reason to listen to their nonsense. But Glance said with an arrogant attitude, "Here, we are the rules. Looks like we need to teach you a lesson." Rudd looked at Alan in front of him and was surprised to find that his face was covered in injuries. He recited White Wave Blade's motto, "We exist to protect the weak." Hearing this, Glance was stunned, not understanding what Rudd wanted to do. Rudd continued to denounce them for now being reduced to bandits. If the original leader knew, he would definitely be disappointed in them. Having his sore spot touched, Glance became furious with embarrassment and stared hard at Rudd. He called to his brothers to attack, vowing to completely eliminate Rudd. Elmira and Alicia immediately asked if he needed help. Rudd refused. To deal with these few people, he alone was enough. The bald Galt stepped forward first, his powerful right hook smashing hard toward Rudd. Rudd's nimble form dodged, and with a backhand punch, he smashed hard into Galt's face. Seeing this, the scarred Glenn immediately swung his sword forward, aiming straight for Rudd's vital points. Rudd quickly crouched down, easily dodging the blade, and with a backhand punch from bottom to top, hit Glenn squarely in the cheek. Glenn instantly flew far away. Seeing this, Glance personally attacked, swinging his spear. The spear stabbed fiercely toward Rudd with a whistling sound. The next instant, Glance was completely shocked. He never expected Rudd could dodge it. Rudd leaped up, borrowed the force, and kicked hard into Glance's body. Glance fell unable to get up, and Rudd sneered, "Is this all you've got?" Glance angrily stood up. He roared and erupted with full power, his aura surging, clearly planning to use his ultimate move. Elmira's eyes carried a hint of contempt as she said, "Still has some skill." Glance declared sternly that he would use his killing move to completely finish off Rudd. The ground instantly exploded with flames, and the rumbling sound was deafening. Seeing this, his subordinates cheered joyfully, their faces full of worship, praising that Glance was indeed their boss. They were certain that Rudd would die from this move, because no one could withstand such power. When the smoke cleared, Rudd's long sword was steadily positioned at his neck. Such a big move couldn't hit him at all. Glance clenched his fists in frustration. He never expected Rudd would be this strong. The lackey on the side was also stunned. Unwilling to give up, he still wanted to fight again, but Rudd bluntly said he wasn't his match and advised him to give up early. How could Glance possibly listen to Rudd? He shouted for Alan and Castor to come help quickly. Rudd looked at the two hesitating people and reminded them that the adventuring team they longed for wasn't a bandit gang like this. These words struck right at Alan's heart, and he couldn't help thinking of the past again. White Wave Blade existed to protect the weak in the first place. He looked up at Glance again and said, "We exist to protect the weak." Glance was left speechless and said, "You bastard." Elmira was getting impatient with the stalemate and urged Rudd to hurry up and get on the road. Rudd worried that leaving like this would make things difficult for Alan, but Alan's problems ultimately had to be solved by himself. So before leaving, they looked at Glance and coldly warned them to stop fooling around. With this time, they'd be better off dedicating themselves to training to become stronger. Glance looked at their departing backs and roared furiously, "You just wait!" Entering the undersea temple labyrinth, going further would mean stepping into the sea. Elmira turned to instruct Alicia to quickly help with preparations before entering the sea. Alicia immediately activated the water spirit's blessing, and blue water magic enveloped Elmira. She could now move freely in the water. Seeing this, Rudd also quickly activated Amphibious, curious in his heart about what kind of monsters they would encounter later. Preparations complete, the three immediately jumped into the seawater, ready to set off. Rudd looked at the scene before him with eyes full of amazement. So this was the underwater temple. But Alicia reminded Rudd not to be amazed just yet. The next second, a monster slowly swam out from the darkness. Hammerhead Shark, level 32, skills, Steel Headbutt, high-speed swimming. Skill, Steel Headbutt. Just upon meeting, the Hammerhead Shark used its skill to charge fiercely at the three of them at high speed. Rudd immediately called out a reminder that the Hammerhead Shark was charging at them. Alicia and Rudd reacted extremely quickly and dodged rapidly. Elmira still crouched in place. Alicia's heart tightened, and she quickly called out to Elmira. But Elmira said in a calm tone, "There's no need to dodge an attack of this level at all." She blocked the Hammerhead Shark's ultimate move with just one hand. Rudd was secretly amazed. She actually dared say an attack of this level was nothing. Elmira raised her hand to activate Monster Element, and with one hand completely shattered the Hammerhead Shark's jaw. Then she immediately urged Rudd to turn the just-slain monster into a dish. Suddenly she seemed to see something abnormal. Bubbles were rising from the sandy ground beneath their feet, and a head slowly lifted up from the ground. The next second, countless thick tentacles suddenly burst out from the sand, lunging straight at the unprepared Elmira. Elmira sensed something was wrong and wanted to dodge, but was still tightly wrapped by the tentacles. She was thoroughly annoyed. She didn't expect the opponent would mimic the ground and set a trap, and behind her lurked another Hammerhead Shark. Rudd's heart tightened, and he shouted sternly to warn her to be careful. Skill, high-speed swimming. Rudd's form shot like lightning toward Elmira at high speed and beheaded the Hammerhead Shark with one strike. He let out a long breath. Fortunately, he made it in time. Alicia instructed Elmira that there were many trap-like monsters here, and acting rashly was very dangerous. Elmira said helplessly, "Next time tell me about this kind of situation earlier," but since the monster had already revealed itself, there was nothing to fear at all, she said as she swam toward that octopus. Skill, poison needles. Countless fine poison needles shot toward her, and Elmira looked completely disdainful. She just raised her claws and deflected all those poison needles. Then she fiercely dove and crashed into that monster. The powerful impact force sent the monster crashing down severely injured, completely losing its ability to resist. Elmira tore at the monster's tentacles, her eyes brightening. This guy seemed quite delicious too. She once again excitedly urged Rudd to hurry up and cook, and in the corner, a silly fish was staring blankly at them. On the other side, the previous defeat made Glance grit his teeth in anger, vowing in his heart that he would never forgive them. He sternly questioned his subordinate about where in the labyrinth Rudd and his group were now. Castor used his third eye skill to control that silly fish, and saw that Rudd's group was resting on the second floor of the labyrinth. After hearing this, Glance gave a sinister laugh. The second floor was the habitat of the monster devil shell. Just approaching carelessly would result in being caught by tentacles, and after being hit by poison needles, one would weaken and die. Ordinary adventurers had no chance of survival. He laughed triumphantly. This labyrinth was their territory in the first place, and they planned to take a detour to intercept them. His subordinate looked troubled. Other passages were occupied by large groups of sea monsters and weren't easy to traverse. Glance took out the Azure Pearl of the Abyss. This was a supreme rarity divine artifact that could control sea monsters, so with it there was nothing to fear. Seeing this, his subordinate's eyes showed shock, curious how he obtained this treasure. Glance looked smug. Yesterday, he threatened adventurers who entered the labyrinth and snatched it from them. Now he could use the Azure Pearl of the Abyss's power to control monsters and kill Rudd and his group. Castor looked at Alan with a face full of worry, asking if his body could still hold up. Alan forced himself through the discomfort and shook his head. He was long used to such situations. More than that, he was puzzled. The Azure Pearl of the Abyss should have been in the royal capital's treasure vault, so how did it appear here? Glance was completely unaware, his mind full of making Rudd and his group properly witness White Wave Blade's might. After entering the Sea Temple labyrinth from another route, they passed many fishmen along the way. The lackeys exclaimed in amazement. This pearl was really powerful. The monsters truly didn't attack them at all. This pearl's effect was even better than they imagined. Getting close to Rudd's location, Glance signaled for Galt to hand him the octopus. He took the octopus and stabbed it through without hesitation, then casually threw the pierced octopus into the fishman horde. Blood immediately dispersed in the seawater. Watching the fishman's eyes gradually change color, Glance's goal was achieved. The bloody smell rapidly spread, and fishmen from the depths also surged out in large numbers. He knew clearly in his heart that this type of octopus's blood could make fishmen become ferocious, and could also attract more companions. Glance looked at Alan with a mocking tone and said, "You know all this clearly, don't you?" When Rudd and his group reached this floor, they would instantly be besieged by ferocious fishmen. Even someone with formidable strength had absolutely no possibility of escaping safely when facing such a siege. Alan simply couldn't accept that Glance had become so despicable. He recalled the scene, the former leader facing a large group of fishmen alone to save them. Alan suppressed his anger and questioned why Glance would do such a cruel thing. Adventurers shouldn't fight among themselves, and if Isaac saw what White Wave Blade had become, he would definitely be disappointed. Hearing Isaac's name, Glance suddenly grabbed Alan by the throat. He forbade Alan from mentioning that name again, and even more so from defying his own orders. He obsessively emphasized that he was now the captain of White Wave Blade. After saying this, he called everyone to head to the depths of the palace together. Glenn said if Alan couldn't stand it, he should just leave White Wave Blade. Better to get lost early. On the other side, Rudd was serving up the just-made cream pan-seared hammerhead shark and devil shell. Seeing Elmira's curious expression, Rudd got carried away. This was his specialty dish. Elmira sighed. She didn't expect they could create such a dining space at the bottom of the sea. Alicia said with a smile that as long as these spirits helped, creating a space was just a small matter. If Uldyr were in good condition, creating a space 10 times larger than this would be no problem. Rudd immediately thanked Uldyr for helping make fire during cooking, and hoped it would get better soon. Alicia quickly reminded Rudd that if he didn't hurry up and eat, the dishes would all be eaten by Elmira. But Rudd was unhurried and rummaged through his bag for something. He took out a lunchbox and handed it to Alicia on the side. Alicia looked at this exclusive lunchbox and didn't react for a moment. Rudd said that previously, every time they were eating, Alicia watched from the side drooling, so he specially prepared this lunchbox for her last night. Alicia was so moved she couldn't speak and couldn't wait to start tasting it. After eating their fill, Rudd had learned the steel headbutt, mimic, and poison needle skills and prepared to go to the next floor. Alicia said that starting from the next floor, humanoid monsters called fishmen would appear. They possessed intelligence and would coordinate with companions to launch joint attacks, so they must be extra careful. Fishmen usually acted in groups of 3, but encountering a large group would be extremely dangerous. But the probability of encountering such a large group of fishmen was actually quite low, so there was no need to worry too much. As she spoke, Alicia pushed open the door, preparing to advance to the next floor. But the moment she pushed open the door, the scene before them left all 3 stunned. Fishmen surged out like a tide, their numbers far exceeding imagination. Alicia's face showed disbelief, and she quickly suggested they retreat first, but Elmira didn't care at all and walked straight ahead. Alicia quickly called out to Elmira. She suggested retreating again, not wanting to fight so many fishmen head-on here. But Elmira looked completely disdainful, not taking the fishmen's intelligence and group attacks seriously at all. She provoked the fishman horde. "You're just fish, come at me all at once, if you dare." The fishmen were completely enraged, and immediately swarmed forward, lunging at Elmira. Rudd was so scared he cried out, shouting danger, but Elmira showed no fear. She condensed monster element in her right fist, and without hesitation threw a fierce punch with impressive momentum. The powerful shockwave instantly spread, eliminating half the fishmen on the spot. All the fishmen watched dumbfounded, exclaiming that Elmira's strength was truly too strong. But quite a few fishmen still remained, and they suggested retreating quickly again. But Elmira looked completely relaxed as she reassured the two not to panic. She told Rudd and Alicia to hold onto her tight. This move had some special effort added to it. Surrounding water droplets rotated and merged into her monster element, growing larger and larger in volume, and faster in speed. Soon it formed a massive vortex, pulling all the remaining surrounding fishmen into it. Rudd and Alicia held onto Elmira for dear life, barely managing not to be swept away by the vortex. The monster element in the vortex gradually intensified, and every stream of water became as sharp as a blade. Elmira snorted lightly. Finally, the fishmen were torn into countless fragments by the vortex. Scattered in the water,